Hello everyone! Last week we did the story of the Western Plaguelands, and as promised, today we're going to deep dive into the story of Scholomance, and we made it a little bit extra special. Now the Plaguelands did not always have this name. It was earned by the devastation that was caused to it. The human Kel'Thuzad, in order of the Lich King, he worked on using his connections, his fortune, the power of illusion, persuasion, sickness and force, to develop and spread the plague across the lands of Lordaeron and establish the Lich King's hold upon Azeroth. All this to weaken the world for another invasion from the Lich King's creators, namely the Burning Legion. When Kel'Thuzad arrived back in Lordaeron, he did so as a holy man, preaching the hope of a brand new religion. He won over the lower classes by playing on their disillusionment with Lordaeron's government. He proclaimed that he could ease the pain of the downtrodden, give hope to the hopeless, and lead the destitute to eternal life. The lies, they came easily to him. He had seen the power of Undead. Now that it was bound to the Lich King, he no longer feared it. He even hungered for the day when it would cast off the shackles of life and ascend to a greater undead form. For the rich, Kel'Thuzad took a different approach. He enticed nobles and landowners with offers of great power and immortality if they joined his cause. Some voiced concern about what seemed like a people's movement geared toward toppling the established order, but Kel'Thuzad eased their fears. He said that the lower classes were no threat. They were simply a tool that the privileged could use to destroy their rivals and secure more wealth. As the years passed, Kel'Thuzad recruited more and more people to his cause. Few truly understood the horrors that awaited them all. Only individuals whom he was certain that he could turn to darkness. They learned the truth about the plague of Undead and what it would do to humanity. In time, Kel'Thuzad's followers would become known as the Cult of the Damned. The cult's headquarters, they were established in the catacombs beneath an ancient human fortress that was called Scholomance. Now what better way to uncover how these events went down than to follow our adventurer as they come in contact with the spirits still lingering at the school.
Hello, young man. I'm Eva Sarkov, and this is my husband, Lucian. It is a pleasure to make your acquaintance.
The pleasure is mine, madam. Might I ask, what is it that you are doing here?
Oh, certainly. We were once servants of the House Barov, what is now known as the Scholomance. I was the head maid, and Lucian was Master Barov's butler. We had worked for the Barovs for decades, until...
Until what, Eva? I must know.
Oh, it's just so horrible. The House Barov was once full of life, full of splendor.
Take a slice of pie, grab a glass of wine, enjoy yourselves. All are welcome at the Barovs.
Our chef has prepared an excellent roast pig for dinner.
Jandis! I was wondering if you could show Pete the one you showed us before. You want to see a magic trick?
The manor was the Barov's primary residence amidst their far-reaching empire. Lucian and I noticed that as the days progressed, the Barovs became depressed, despondent.
Bandits have been seen all over Alterac. I think we need to increase security around our borders.
Oh, they're probably in league with that damn Blackmore. Have you seen that monster he's trained to fight in his ring? He's up to something, I know it. Our estate, everything we've worked for. We can't be here forever to protect Caia, our land.
Paranoia and rage often overcame the master and missus. At night, we could hear the Barovs arguing in their chambers. From what we understood, their greed had broken the dam, so to speak.
What do you mean? I see you wear the garb of the Kirin Tor. I assume you are a mage from Dalaran, then. Tell me, what is it you wanted to speak to me about?
Lord Barov, you see, some of my peers would disapprove of some of my studies, the power I sought out, and I think we can help each other. I heard you had your alchemists research the secrets of immortality. I can help you there. All I ask in return for eternal life is that you provide me with your estate to train my acolytes and advance my studies. That is all.
We suspect that in order to preserve their fortune and hold of the land well past their lifespan, the Barovs made a deal with a powerful human mage named Kel'Thuzad. From this deal sprang the School of Necromancy, a place which bore the cult of the damned and would become their capital. As each week passed, the House Barov became more and more decrepit. Dark beings began to take residence in the various wings of the house. Upkeep became impossible and disgusting.
Why didn't you just leave?
And go where? It was all that we knew, all that we had known, and all that we would ever know. Eventually, we lost contact with the Barovs and ultimately were separated from the household. We knew not what happened to the other servants, only that there were screams. Tortured screams. Knowing that we had nowhere to go, Lucian and I were forced to hide in our quarters. During the day, when the school was relatively quiet, Lucian would sneak out to scrounge up food and drink.
So, what happened?
We did this for about 6 months and watched as the house went through horrifying changes. Foul monsters roamed through the manor at will. Dark cultists populated every inch with various paraphernalia relating to rituals and sacrifices.
You have found your way here because you are among the few gifted with true vision in a world cursed with blindness. Through our master, all things are possible. His power is without limit, and his will unbending.
Perhaps you should have studied more.
Strip the flesh, harvest the organs, nothing goes to waste. Mix and stir, apply heat.
We knew that we could not hide much longer.
Odd. I didn't think we had any servants left. Now you stay put. The circle of blood is made just for you.
No restraints? Just a circle?
Restraints? There are things in this world far more restraining than bars and shackles, young master. The undead surrounding us, constantly tormenting us with horrifying acts of depravity. Finally, he came.
The doctor is in.
He introduced himself as Dr. Thielen Krastenov. We came to know him as the Butcher.
Tell me more.
We finally understood what the screams were from. The Butcher exposed us to pain that we did not know existed. He used us in countless experiments, attempting to devise a plague. The days turned to weeks. We would have died on the first day had it not been for that cruel monster keeping us alive through magical means.
This is an atrocity.
The Butcher would speak of the blood of the innocents and his dark master, Kirtanos, of how he must appease his master. Finally, the beast was done with his experiments. We had been drained of all life. Our spirits shattered. The sweet embrace of death was upon us, and we welcomed it with open arms. But in his infinite cruelty, the Butcher revived us from death's door. We were to be kept alive and thrown to his ravenous ghouls. He laughed as he watched the fiends devour our flesh.
I feel sick.
We feel nothing. Our souls remain here, in limbo. We are unable to leave until our remains are found and spirits laid to rest.
And so, darkness swept over Scholomance. From within, Kel'Thuzad and his cult of the damned. They worked very hard on bringing death to the lands of Lordaeron. Once their plans were put in motion, Prince Arthas followed a very dark path, which eventually led him to the culling of Stratholme, following Mal'Ganis to the cold land of Northrend, and while there, he picked up Frostmourne. Now he too was in the service of the Lich King, fulfilling his grand schemes. Kel'Thuzad's wish of dropping the shackles of life and ascend to a greater undead form, they came true. He became the Lich, while the school of necromancy that continued its operations, and heroes were called in to take care of business. Easier said than done though, since the door to Scholomance was not exactly left open. Unless you had someone who could pick a lock, like a rogue or an engineer, or someone actually willing to kill themselves in front of the door, spawn behind it and open it up for the team, you were going to need a skeleton key. Not a cheap quest to complete either. Skeletal fragments from the skeletons at Anderhall. They were taken to Crinkle Goodsteel in Gadgerston, who dared to ask a whopping 15 gold for his service. 15 gold, can you believe it? Only the richest could be heroes in this game. In the fires of Fireplume Ridge, we molded the key, finished it off by slaying Arash the Summoner in Anderhall, and with that, we could combat the horrors within Scholomance, bring peace to the spirits of Ava and her husband Lucian. The Butcher, Dr. Teolan Krastenov, is responsible for the deaths of thousands, and he must be punished. Justice demands retribution. We find him and exact upon him the agony that he has inflicted upon countless of innocents. Once he is destroyed, we burn the remains of the Sarkovs, healing their spirits, but not setting them free quite yet. A great weight has been lifted from their hearts, but our task is far from over. Krestennos' master, Kirtanos, it still lives. Before we may even face Kirtanos, we must first secure a method in which to summon him. It is said that Yandis Barov stewards the blood of the innocents from Krestenov to Kirtanos. We find her in the sunken catacombs of Scholomance and we strike her down. From her corpse, we retrieve Krestenov's bag of horrors. This is just what we needed, the blood of the innocents, the purest of blood, used to appease Krestennos' master. With blood, Kirtanos may be summoned. It is with blood then that Kirtanos must be destroyed. Within the chamber of summoning, we find a brazier, upon which we place a drop of our very own blood. Kirtanos comes. He cannot resist. The full fury and wrath of 1,000 innocent deaths is unleashed upon him. With its death, a chapter in the horrible tale Scholomance comes to a close. We have earned Lucian and Ava's deepest, everlasting gratitude for our bravery. There is, however, much more to be done. Others here are now aware of our brave acts, other spirits that we can see with the spectral essence, a gift imbued with the peace of their own essence. It allows us to communicate with the other lost souls of Seer Darrow. One major reason for doing this questline was actually to gain access to a vendor that sells some awesome patterns. Well, of course, it is pretty cool to see that the spirits of the lost, they're still lost in the past. Some even mention that they're still expecting Uther the Lightbringer to show up, but the Paladin would never accomplish his mission to aid and comfort those here that are suffering from the war. Others, like Magistrate Marduk, are not spared the anguish that memories provide. He is well aware of what happened to Scholomance, of how the cult of the damned infiltrates society and unleashes massive devastation, of how the Lich Raz Frostwhisper oversees the school in Kel'Thuzad's absence and has to be taken care of. This is the being responsible for training all of its Dark Masters, a lieutenant and favorite pupil of Kel'Thuzad. He was once a hedge mage of Stromgarde, a rogue wizard that never received his formal training from Dalaran. When Kel'Thuzad finally opened up the cult, Raz was amongst the first to join his ranks, knowing that through dark magic he would find immortality. After quickly advancing through the ranks of the cult, it was time for the ritual. At Menethil's gift within Stratholme, he pledged his undying soul to the Lich King himself, slicing his own throat from ear to ear. Smiling as he did, his body collapsed inside the borders of the pentagram. The Lich King stood over the fallen mage, and with a single motion, Raz Frostwhisper the Lich was born. Now taking care of a Lich is rather tricky, considering that you need to destroy their phylactery to truly get rid of them, but perhaps there is another way. Perhaps we can find some way of stripping Raz from his Lich powers altogether and turn him back into a mortal. By going back to the place where he was created, we use the soulbound keepsake to bind his soul to the item. With it, we revert him to a mortal and we strike him down. The head is then returned to the magistrate. 10,000 souls cry out in unison. We have struck a mortal blow to the Scourge, and of course their masters. But so much more remains to be done within the dark halls of Scholomance. Lord Alexei, Lady Elucia, and Yandis Barov, they were overtaken by the darkness, but their two sons, Alexei and Weldon, they managed to avoid spending their eternal damnation within the school. One is still a human, while the other fell to the plague, broke himself free, and now operates as a Forsaken. They even came face to face once, with Weldon not taking the kill, unable to strike down his own brother, even if he is an undead. He regrets that choice now. Money is on their hearts and on their minds. Both of them have not forgotten about the wealth that their family once owned, and both of them have never learned to share. First, they asked adventurers to go into Scholomance and retrieve their family fortune, the deeds to Seer Darrow, Brill, South Shore and Tar Mill. It's anyone's guess how they actually plan to claim those areas, but all the same, with their deeds in their possession, they only have one more request. Please, go out and kill my brother, the last of the Barov family. Despite their heads being brought back as proof of demise, neither one of them really died. And with the Mr. Pannoria revamp, they left the area altogether to show up during Warlords of Draenor. Here we see them working together as partners in Barov Industries. They united to plunder the worlds of Draenor's riches. But again, their greed got the better of them, and they stabbed each other in the back. Last we know of them is being forced to languish in the abandoned garrison, eternally punished by being a follower for heroes that already moved on. So like I mentioned, Scholomance has seen a couple of changes over time. It went from a 10-man raid into a 5-man dungeon, followed by some change in the Cataclysm, and then a complete revamp with Mr. Pandaria. That changed the layout as well as the story told inside. But in Classic, this massive dungeon, it had 3 required bosses: Raz Frostwhisper, Red Ogre and Dark Master Gantling. 7 to 8 optional bosses, and then 6 bosses required to even summon the final boss, Summon Gantling. So many bosses meant that there were many different paths you could take, as well as many different people that did not feel like doing your optional bosses. One of those could be found right at the start in the Reliquary. The succubus, known as Blood Steward of Kirtonos, was completely optional, but would drop a Blood of Innocence, so you had a resource to summon another optional boss. From the Reliquary, you would go into the Chamber of Summoning, with on the right the option to use this Blood of the Innocent to fight Kirtonos the Herald. You then move forward into the now called Butcher's Sanctum, which opened up the choices. Going down the path on the right, that sends you through a crypt-like area, what they now use for the Halls of Illusions, with the optional boss Gendis Barov waiting at the end. The daughter of the Barov family was once an Archmage of Dalaran and a powerful illusionist, able to create copies of herself indistinguishable from her real form. This way, her enemies had no way of tracking her down, skills that she could still utilize in combat. She drops a journal full with rantings and ravings about the undead. Towards the end of the book is what appears to be a tailoring pattern for the creation of a bag. This taught tailors how to make velcloth bags, designed specifically once upon a time to hold your soul shards. I don't remember much from Classic Scholomance, but I do remember that going through this area was really painful. Going through the path straight ahead of you, that would send you through the Great Ossuary, where they're busy experimenting with the plagued hatchlings. Red Ogre was waiting down below, while paladins or shamans with their quest, they could use this area to summon the optional boss, Death Knight Dark Reaver. He himself was once a celebrated paladin, but was seduced by the call of the Lich King. Now he threatens to twist the spirit realm to do his own bidding, and he must be stopped, which rewarded shamans with a pretty sweet helmet. Paladins were more concerned about his now corrupted steed. After a very lengthy questline, they could reclaim the spirits and earn the epic charger. Going through the path on the left, that takes you into the viewing room, where there used to be 2 paths you could take, rather than just one. The path we take now straight ahead, that used to lead into the laboratory, where the fight against Raz Frostwhisper played out. Warlocks could also use the laboratory as part of their mount quest, unleash a little imp to make a parchment. Well, you could also summon the optional boss Cormac here. This is a massive ogre necromancer required for the Dungeon Set 2 questline, also known as tier 0.5. In the viewing room itself, we see the optional boss Vectus giving a lecture to his board students. He's the one who developed the Plague Dragonflight by experimenting and messing around with X, taken out of Blackrock Spire. His partner next to him might look familiar for those who have done the Battle of Darrowshire questline. This is the optional boss Marduk Blackpool, who corrupted the spirit of Joseph Redpath, sealing the human's defeat. The door on the left, that's the one that leads to the Headmaster's study, and our final boss required for the instance, but he doesn't show up until you've cleared all 6 rooms, each of them filled with an individual boss. There's the Revenian, one of Kel'Thuzad's mightiest agents, ready to devour those students who show any sign of weakness. There's Lord Keeper Polkelt, the High Elf Instructor Militia, the spirits of Lady Ilusha Barov, the Death Knight Lord Alexei Barov, and Dr. Teolan Krestenov, aka the Butcher.
School is in session.
It's a good thing that we need to clear out the rooms before engaging the Dark Master Gantling, the headmaster here appointed by Kel'Thuzad himself. The man loves to teleport random party members into one of the side chambers, where then they'll have to fight their own way out. A massive, absolutely massive dungeon with a lot of different paths, a lot of different encounters. But with Mr. Pandaria, they decided to streamline this a whole lot more. They brought the encounters down to a total of 5 and sealed off any of the side paths. A talking skull lets us know that he and his family fell victim to this place, what seems like ages ago. Let their fate serve as a warning to those who would meddle in necromancy. It wants our aid in lifting the curse that has befallen upon Scholomance, to give Darkmaster Gantling his final death. While we go through the place, we might as well make sure to destroy the necromantic knowledge that they've gathered. Not 4 deeds this time around, instead 4 tomes are destroyed. In the shadow of the light, Kel'Thuzad's deep knowledge, forbidden rites, and the dark grimoire. Individuals seeking to master the powers of undeath. They know well of Scholomance, the infamous school of necromancy, located in the dark and foreboding crypts beneath Sir Darrow. In recent years, several of the instructors have changed, but the institution remains under the control of Darkmaster Gantling, a particularly sadistic and insidious practitioner of necromantic magic. The first boss, Instructor Chillheart, she teaches the course Introduction to the Dark Arts.
Class is now in session.
She journeyed all the way from Northrend to teach aspiring necromancers discipline, harshly punishing those who disappoint her. She commands the icy chill of the north and masterfully uses Scolomance's libraries to deadly effect. As you may know now, liches are not that easy to kill. Unless, of course, they're dumb enough to keep the phylactery in the same room. Next is Yandis Barov, teaching the course Advanced Illusions. Barov's spirit lurked in the recesses of Scholomance for years, but now she's taken a much more active role in educating the next generation of magi. Her vast knowledge of illusions has made her both a valued educator and a dangerous opponent to anyone foolish enough to draw her ire. She is still a big fan of making copies of herself. Let's see if we can give her a final death.
Death hurts. Unreal.
In the Chamber of Summoning, we run into an old friend, Lilian Voss. Recently, she's been resurrected by the Valkyr in order of Sylvanas, and she was offered a position amongst the Forsaken. But Lilian wasn't down with being an undead. She tried to go home to her father, a high priest of the Scarlet Crusade. The Crusaders are not too fond of the undead, so her father tried to have her killed. Instead, it was she who murdered him and pursued a path away from the Forsaken, fighting against Crusaders and Necromancers alike. We actually helped her with that within the monastery. We also got her some beautiful rune blades, which she now points at the Dark Master.
Run, Necromancer! Your life ends once I catch my breath.
Come, Voss. Your fate awaits you.
Enter Redogor for the course Reanimation 101. Redogor was thought to be destroyed in Andahal, but Gandling immediately began preparations to reanimate the clattering terror so he could guard against intruders. The Dark Master sought to make Redogor more ferocious than ever, imbuing him with an insatiable desire to harvest raw materials from his enemies. We can use the bone piles in the room to protect ourselves from his most devastating attacks. Further ahead, within the Butcher's Sanctum, good old Dr. Teolan Krastenov can still, on occasion, make an appearance. He even drops his bag of horrors, which you can use to perform quick surgery on yourself. But we can clearly see that his students are still hard at work. They're pursuing his studies.
Did you forget, girl? I am the Dark Master. I command the undead.
I won't let you.
Meanwhile, Lilian is having a little bit of trouble dealing with the Dark Master. His mastery over the undead, it splits her soul from her body, and it turns her lovely rune blades against us. Thankfully, we are able to hit her hard enough, put her soul back where it belongs, and she regains control.
What?
Die, necromancer!
The bones! Oh, you wretch!
Leave me to die alone, please.
Eternal death would not be your fate. Instead, we would see Lilian pop up many times in the future. Most recently, she's been helping out the Horde with their war campaign and guiding people into undeath. Professor Slate. He's in the middle of a lecture as we barge into the viewing room. On his desk, we can find a polyformic acid potion. Its results are a little bit unpredictable, but when lucky enough, it does give us a chance to deal additional nature damage to the Dark Master and his minions.
If you haven't come to study, school is in session.
Dark Master Gandling, with his course Advanced Studies. The recent defeat in Andahal, it has put Dark Master Gandling in the foulest of moods. More than ever, all students of Scholomance are advised to impress him at every turn. Pupils who dissatisfy the headmaster, they will be removed from class to perform lab work, or they become the lab work. Still a big fan of sending random enemies away. Let's make that random talking skull very happy and lift the curse on Scholomance.
Class dismissed.
Would you look at that? Turns out that the skull was Lord Alexei Barov all along. He owes us a debt, one which he can never repay, but we do have his thanks for lifting the curse off of his family. Kel'Thuzad, the Lich King, and now Dark Master Gandling, all of them are dead. Perhaps now he too can find some semblance of peace. Fast forward to the Legion time period, and once again Scholomance is besieged by darkness, this time in the form of alternate Gul'dan and his Shadow Council. The Orc Warlock plans to perform a powerful ritual that will bring all opposition to their knees. He is going to need some powerful artifacts to accomplish that. One of them being the Book of Medivh, the same book that Kel'Thuzad once upon a time, he used it to summon Archimonde into the world. No one really knew what happened to the book afterwards, but it seems like Kel'Thuzad entrusted it here within Scholomance, the place where he formed the cult of the Damned. The book, containing knowledge from the corrupted Guardian, is once again needed by the Legion, a great bargaining chip for the Warlocks that are actually after the Scepter of Sargeras, and they need to find some way to earn Gul'dan's trust. They would murder the opposition and steal the book from their broken bodies, leaving Scholomance and his dark practices behind, while pursuing their legendary artifact, which they would wield in the war against the Legion. And there ends the story of the School of Necromancy, the story of Scholomance for the moment. But since we have taken care of business like 3 times already, and they're still carrying on with their obsession for own death, I'm sure that one day it will rear its decrepit head once again and play its part in the story. Before we close off the video, I do have a couple of people that I want to thank for helping bring this story to life. Kalis, of course, with her amazing machinima. Taliesin, Evatel, and Latomi lending their voices to the characters. Honestly, I'm blown away by the result, and so happy that the video is finally out. Finally, there's also WoW Musicable, who had an awesome recording of old school Scholomance up on the YouTube channel, and was kind enough to let me use the recordings. It would have been a whole lot more difficult to show what I was talking about without them. Links to their stuff in the description down below. Hello everyone. Apologies in advance for the sound of my voice. I'm currently dealing with some neck issues and I might actually have to undergo some surgery, but I just wanted to make sure to get some work done before they might take me in. Now last Gamescom, they announced a brand new hero making his way into the Nexus, Kel'Thuzad, and what better reason than to sit down and talk about his story, one that begins as a member of the Kirin Tor.
The Kirin Tor has a legacy of abuse. Kel'Thuzad turned his knowledge of the arcane arts toward necromancy.
He was part of the Council of Six, an impressive, charismatic man, with dark hair and a full beard and strangely glassy eyes, as if he were not really looking at the world around them. Being part of the council, that meant that he possessed connections and power, but he also had a reputation as a dreamer and a researcher, constantly questing for information. When Ner'zhul the Lich King was sent down to Azeroth, he worked on conquering the continent of Northrend. Some of the local population, they were subjugated, the Nerubians, they were dominated, and all of them were turned into new troops for his undead army, bent to his will. Left to rule his kingdom unopposed, the Lich King began preparing for his true mission in this world, weaken it and get it ready for another invasion from the Legion. For this, he reached out into the human lands with his vast consciousness, calling out to any dark soul that would listen. One of those unfortunate souls, that was Kel'Thuzad, who under the guidance of the Lich King delved into the much darker arts of his craft, started experimenting with necromancy. Now nothing as major as the Lich King could produce, of course, small experiments hidden away from the eyes of his colleagues, but over time they discovered what he'd been doing and they could not let it go on. They warned him, they tried to guide him, but his curiosity, or perhaps his lust for power, they simply could not be stopped. He tried to be more careful, to make sure that there was no evidence of his forbidden magics to be found within his chambers, but Archmage Antonidas was smart enough to also check his warehouses in the Northlands, where they found all the evidence that they needed. A box with decaying rats was presented to the council, the fruit of his labor, and they had no other choice but to search all of his properties and destroy all items found tainted by dark magic. King Tyrannus had agreed with their judgment, and if Kel'Thuzad did not abandon this madness, he would be stripped of his rank and holdings and exiled from not only Dalaran, but also from all of Lordaeron. His nameless ally had warned him that this might happen, but Kel'Thuzad had not believed. Strange. He felt almost relieved that events had come to pass. The need for secrecy, it limited the scope of his work, it hindered his advancement, and with his mind racing, he bowed down and left. Doubtless, the Kirin Tor were keeping his so-called disgrace quiet, fearing repercussions should his actions become public knowledge. For once, their cowardice would work in his favor, and his wealth would never line the king's coffers. Now with nothing holding him back, the whispers of Ner'zhul led him to his destination, the cold land of Northrend.
I was cast out by my comrades, exiled, forced to wander the frozen wastes. But I was not alone. Not entirely. The voice, now my only companion, guided me to my destination. Strange, nightmarish creatures awaited me at the entrance. I felt my blood run cold as Icecrown itself.
Upon arriving at Naxxramas, Anub'arak was waiting for the Archmage, ready to give him a tour of the facility and show him what the future had in store. They ventured through the wings of the raid that most of you are familiar with, where Kel'Thuzad beheld wonders beyond his wildest dreams. His unknown companion, he'd been able to resurrect beings with speech and motor skills. He could even force the undead to be obedient. There were also magical artifacts, laboratory equipment and other supplies that put his old laboratories to shame. When they reached the part with cauldrons filled with a bubbling greenish liquid, the Archmage nearly touched it, but a massive claw abruptly blocked his way. The Master wishes for him to remain among the living, Anub'arak explained, and this fluid was designed to not only turn people into the undead, but also force them to obey. As a demonstration, the former Nerubian king, he led him to a cage that held two prisoners, two humans, a man and a woman. The female was sick. She begged Kel'Thuzad to show mercy, to burn her body and end her misery, but Kel'Thuzad simply looked away and he whispered to Anub'arak to make her quiet. In response, Anub'arak pierced her heart and he dropped the corpse on the floor, causing the man to howl with anguish, but that was just the start. The female rose as an undead servant. She told her husband to get away from her, that she would hurt him. She pushed him away, causing him to fly against the cell bars and slip down onto the floor. She was unable to control herself as the transformation was completed and she leaped at her husband, lashing out, baring her teeth.
The man screamed, and blood spurted onto the cell floor. Kel'Thuzad flinched away. Closing his eyes didn't help. He could still hear unspeakable sounds. Ripping, shredding, chewing. A soft, wretched mewling that he very much feared meant that the undead woman was aware of her actions to some level, but she was unable to stop herself. Sickened and horrified, he teleported out of Naxxramas altogether. He staggered a little distance away and he threw up. Finding a patch of unsullied snow, he scooped up hands full and he scrubbed viciously at his mouth and face. It felt as if he would never be clean again. What had he gotten himself involved in? One by one, his scattered thoughts fell into place. The necromancer was no simple academic, interested in studying a wildly condemned field of magic. Nor did he plan to stop at fortifying his home against attack. He was mass-producing a fluid that converted people into zombies. Naxxramas also had an enormous stockpile of supplies, weapons, armor, training grounds. These weren't defensive measures, these were preparations for war. There was no escape though, as Kel'Thuzad was escorted back in front of Ner'zhul, who explained to him that his powers were beyond comprehension, that he could read Kel'Thuzad's mind as if he was reading a book. No schemes or future plans of overthrowing him would ever be accomplished, and not even death is a certainty when you're dealing with the Lich King. Serving this spectral being would surely bring Kel'Thuzad great power, and also damn him for all eternity. But that knowledge came far too late. Besides, damnation, it had little meaning without the prospect of true death. I am yours, I swear it, he said hoarsely, and Kel'Thuzad pledged his loyalty to the Lich King. He worked on using his connections, his fortune, the power of illusion, persuasion, sickness and force to spread the plague across the lands of Lordaeron and establish the Lich King's hold upon Azeroth. Kel'Thuzad then returned to Lordaeron in disguise, and over the span of several years he formed a brotherhood of like-minded men and women. This brotherhood, which he called the Cult of the Damned, promised its acolytes social equality and eternal life on Azeroth in exchange for their servants and obedience to Ner'zhul.
My life for Ner'zhul. I wish only to serve.
As the months passed, Kel'Thuzad found many eager volunteers for his new cult amongst the tired, overburdened labors of Lordaeron. It was surprisingly easy to achieve his goal, namely to transfer the citizens' faith from the holy light into believing in Ner'zhul's dark shadow. We can even see a reflection of this in Old Hilsbrand, where he talks about necromancy with Hel'Kilar. He gives him a small demonstration of his power, and he promises him that he can teach him his ways, the ways of the necromancer. Scholomance, once owned by the Barov family, that also fell into the hands of the Cult of the Damned. As Kel'Thuzad's charismatic influence, it pushed the family to donate it to its cause. The promise of immortality, it was seductive, but the cultists killed the Barovs and turned their ancient crypts into a school of necromancy. As the Cult of the Damned grew in size and influence, Kel'Thuzad made sure to hide it well from the authorities of Lordaeron, and with his success, the Lich King made the final preparations for his assault against human civilization. Placing his plague energies into a number of portable artifacts called plague cauldrons, Ner'zhul ordered Kel'Thuzad to transport these cauldrons to Lordaeron, where they would be hidden within various cult-controlled villages. The cauldrons, protected by loyal cultists, they would then act as plague generators, sending the plague out across the unsuspecting farmlands and cities of northern Lordaeron. The plan worked perfectly. Many of Lordaeron's northern villages, they were contaminated almost immediately. Just as in Northrend, the citizens who contracted the plague, they died and arose as the Lich King's willing slaves. As the plague spread, more and more feral zombies arose in the Northlands. Kel'Thuzad looked upon the Lich King's growing army, and he named it the Scourge, for soon it would march upon the gates of Lordaeron and scour humanity from the face of the world. But of course, humanity didn't just roll over and let it all happen. Reports had come in of a plague spreading through the Northlands, one that Antonidas assumed was magical in nature. Jaina Proudmore, together with Calia Menethil, they worked together on figuring out what was going on. They encountered a farmhouse where the living dead assaulted them.
Lock your shields and defend yourselves. Their arrows won't get through.
Skeletons? Slay them all immediately.
These were trained soldiers supporting them, but nothing had ever prepared them for something like this. Despite the horrific sights, they were able to fight them off and discover some clues leading them to Anderhall, where smoke was already rising in the sky. Arthas hoped that if the town had burned, then maybe at least the grain, which was used to spread the plague, that it had been destroyed as well, and it was in Anderhall where they finally caught up with Kel'Thuzad.
Hello again, children. I am Kel'Thuzad, and I've come to deliver a warning. Leave well enough alone. Your curiosity will be the death of you.
Are you responsible for this plague, Necromancer? Is this cult your doing?
Yes, I ordered the Cult of the Damned to distribute the plagued grain. But the sole credit is not mine.
What do you mean?
I serve the Dreadlord, Mal'Ganis. He commands the Scourge that will cleanse this land and establish a paradise of eternal darkness.
And what exactly is this Scourge meant to cleanse?
Why, the living, of course. His plan is already in motion. Seek him out at Strathall if you need further proof.
The granary, untouched by the fire racing through the rest of Anderhall, it was already empty. The shipments had already been sent out. Who knows how many people would die because of it? And Arthas was furious, blaming himself. Further north, they searched for Kel'Thuzad again, and this time he didn't teleport away. A bellow of raw fury exploded from Arthas, and he swung, sweeping his brilliantly glowing hammer parallel to the ground, striking Kel'Thuzad at the knees and sending him flying. Others pressed in, swords slicing and hacking, the men venting their grief and outrage on the source, the cause of this entire disaster. For all his power and magic, it seemed as though Kel'Thuzad could indeed die like any other man. Both legs were shattered by Arthas' sweeping blow and lay at odd angles. His robes were wet with blood, shiny black against the matte black, and red trickled from his mouth. He propped himself up on his arms and tried to speak, spitting out blood and teeth. He tried again.
Naive fool. My death will make little difference in the long run. For now, the scourging of this land begins.
His elbows buckled, and, eyes closing, he fell. The body began to rot immediately. Decomposition that should have taken days happened in mere seconds. The flesh paling, bloating, and bursting open. The men gasped and started back, covering their noses and mouths. Some of them turned and vomited from the stench. Arthas stared, horrified and enraptured at the same time, simply unable to look away. Fluids gushed from the corpse, the flesh taking on a creamy consistency and turning black. The unnatural decomposition slowed, and Arthas turned away, gasping for fresh air. Jaina explained that it's believed that if a necromancer is not perfectly precise in their magical workings, that if they're killed, they're subject to what just happened in front of their very eyes. But as we know, this would not be the end of Kel'Thuzad's story. Arthas' journey then led him to Strathholm, where he decided to purge the town and follow the Dreadlord Mal'Ganis all the way to the cold land of Northrend. Just as the Lich King had planned, Proudmore was waiting for him, a cursed blade that took a piece of his soul, but it did allow him to strike Mal'Ganis down. After wandering Northrend for a while, listening to the whispers of Ner'zhul as well, we find Arthas back in his homeland, now turned into a Death Knight, and he is serving the Lich King. He even murdered his own father and brought the kingdom to ruin, but that was simply another step in their plan. It seems fate is a sense of irony. As the Dreadlord Tychondrius, he orders him to gather some acolytes and recover the remains of their former master, the necromancer Kel'Thuzad. Several paladins, they tried to stand in his way of getting to the tomb, but all of them fell to the might of Proudmore, and at Anderhall, they claimed their prize.
Come along now, Necromancer. The powers that you once served have need of you again.
Told you, my death would mean little.
What the? Am I hearing ghosts now?
It is I, Kel'Thuzad. I was right about you, Prince Arthas.
The necromancer's remains are badly decomposed and will not survive the journey to Quel'Thalas and the powers of the Sunwell, that which they need to bring Kel'Thuzad back. As a container, a very special urn is selected.
Your father ruled this land for 70 years, and you've ground it to dust in a matter of days.
Very dramatic, Uther. Give me the urn, and I'll make sure you die quickly.
The urn holds your father's ashes, Arthas. What, were you hoping to piss on them one last time before you left his kingdom to rot?
I didn't know what it held. Nor does it matter. I'll take what I came for one way or another.
I dearly hope that there's a special place in hell waiting for you, Arthas.
We may never know, Uther. I intend to live forever.
Excellent work. Now your journey to Quel'Thalas can begin.
Tell him nothing. Only you can hear me. The Dreadlords cannot be trusted. They are the Lich King's jailers. I will tell you all when I walk this world again.
With the urn in their possession, the next goal was reaching the Sunwell, which required them to conquer the High Elf kingdom of Quel'Thalas. The High Elves put up a fierce fight, trying to defend their gates, but a traitor from within all but assured the Scourge victory. Even Sylvanas Windrunner, Ranger General of Silvermoon, she fell to Frostmourne and was resurrected as a Banshee.
Citizens of Silvermoon, I have given you ample opportunities to surrender, but you have stubbornly refused. Know that today, your entire race and your ancient heritage will end. Death itself has come to claim the high home of the elves. Now arise, Kel'Thuzad, and serve the Lich King once again.
I am reborn as promised. The Lich King has granted me eternal life.
I've upheld my end of the bargain, Lich. Are you ready to tell me about the Dreadlords now?
Certainly, but not here. They have eyes and ears everywhere. We'll talk where it's safe.
So, you're not upset about me killing you that one time?
Don't be foolish. The Lich King told me how our encounter would end.
The Lich King knew that I would kill you?
Of course. He chose you to be his champion long before the Scourge even began.
If he's so all-knowing, then how can the Dreadlords control him like they do?
They are agents of the ones who created our master, the fiery lords of the Burning Legion.
What is this Legion?
Kel'Thuzad goes on explaining to Arthas how Ner'zhul the Lich King came to be and what his true purpose is for the world, getting the Legion in to conquer the planets. Of course, that is not his full agenda. In truth, Ner'zhul has no intention of forever being a slave to the demons or kill Jaden, but first they'll have to pretend to be obedient and make contact with Archimonde.
So where are we going now?
There is a nearby encampment of Blackrock orcs who maintain a functional demon gate. I must use the gate to commune with the demon lord and receive his instructions.
The Scourge takes on the orcs, those who had failed the Legion before, and this actually pushed Kil'jaeden into this new plan with the Lich King to build an army that would not fall in on itself like the orcs had done. After clearing them out, Kel'Thuzad does the thing and he speaks with Archimonde.
I call upon thee, Archimonde. Your humble servant seeks an audience.
You called my name, puny Lich, and I have come. You are Kel'Thuzad, are you not?
Yes, Great One. I am the summoner.
Very well then. There is a special tome you must find. The only remaining spellbook of Medivh, the Last Guardian. Only his lost incantations are powerful enough to bring me into your world.
Where should we search for it, Great One?
Seek out the mortal city of Dalaran. It is there that the tome is kept. At twilight, 3 days from now, you will begin the summoning.
The magical city of Dalaran, that is their next target, the place Arthas used to love to visit, mainly because of Jaina studying there, and of course the city that kicked out Kel'Thuzad for all of his dark experiments. This is where they'll find the Book of Medivh, but the city is not without its defenses. They've been able to create an aura that destroys any undead that pass through them, but by some quick movements and swift murders, they are able to claim their prize.
The spellbook is all yours, Lich. Let's take it and leave before the wizards amass for their final attack.
Indeed. I will begin summoning Lord Archimonde at sunset.
The Circle of Power has been prepared per your instructions, Lich. Are you ready to begin the summoning?
Nearly. I've been reading through Medivh's spellbook. His knowledge of demons alone is staggering. I suspect that he was far more powerful than anyone ever realized.
not powerful enough to escape death, that is for certain. Suffice to say, the work he began, we will finish today. Let the summoning commence.
Arthas makes sure to defend Kel'Thuzad while he casts his spell. Even the Legion sends over some troops as the fabric of reality begins to weaken, and they're successful in bringing Archimonde into the worlds. As a side note, when Kel'Thuzad was still part of the Khadon Tor, he was present when Khadgar made his report of all the events that went down in Karazhan. He was very interested in Medivh and the Council of Tirisfal, and now his wish to know more about the corrupted Guardian that has come true as he holds the Book of Medivh.
Come forth, Lord Archimonde. Enter this world, and let us bask in your power.
Tremble, mortals, and despair. Doom has come to this world. You have done well, little Lich. My plan worked perfectly. Lord Archimonde, all the preparations have been made. Very well, Tichondrius. Since the Lich King is of no further use to me, you Dreadlords will now command the Scourge. As you wish, Lord Archimonde. Soon, I will order the invasion to begin. But first, I will make an example of these paltry wizards by crushing their city into the ashes of history.
This has got to be a joke. What happens to us now?
Be patient, young Death Knight. The Lich King foresaw this as well. You may yet have a part to play in his grand design.
Archimonde goes on to destroy Dalaran, and then the Legion sets their eyes on the Well of Eternity. In order to claim it, they have to destroy Nordrassil and deal with the Night Elves, but Kel'Thuzad and Arthas, they have their own plans in mind, and they work against them. The Lich teleports to Death Knight near Illidan, who had just been released from his prison by Tyrande, and he points him towards the skull of Gul'dan and the power to stop Tichondrius, who is busy corrupting their lands. The Demon Hunter agrees with their plan, and he claims the power from the skull, but Arthas was teleported back by Kel'Thuzad as they let the Lich King's plans unfold. Archimonde was eventually defeated by the team-up of Thrall, Jaina, Tyrande, Malfurion, and several others, who together were able to blow up Nordrassil and send the Demon Lord back to the Twisting Nether. For some reason, the Dreadlords are still hanging out in Lordaeron, they're keeping an eye on the Scourge, and they were not aware of these events, and Arthas then returned to reclaim his kingdom. Sylvanas hated Arthas for what he had done to her, but Kel'Thuzad was thrilled to see the prince, now calling himself a king once again. Not all was going that smoothly though, as the powers granted him by the Lich King, they were fading, and enemies were approaching the Frozen Throne, so Arthas had to come back to Northrend to serve his master. The drop in power, it allowed Sylvanas to regain some of her free will, and together with the Dreadlords, she planned a bloody coup.
So the seizures have been getting worse?
Yes. With my powers drained, I can barely command my own warriors. The Lich King warned me that if I didn't reach Northrend soon, all could be lost.
Fear not, my king. Everything is being prepared for your departure. The ships are waiting at the coast, and
there's been a change of plans, King Arthas. You're not going anywhere.
Assassins! It's a trap!
You should never have returned, human. Weakened as you are, we have assumed control over the majority of your warriors. It seems your reign was short-lived.
There are too many of them, my king. Flee! Escape from the city! I'll find my own way out and meet you in the wilderness.
All right, Lich. Good luck.
The majority of his forces, they were claimed by the Dreadlords, but some still answered Arthas' call as he fought his way out of the city. He was so very weak, Frostmourne getting heavier with each and every swing, and near safety, a bunch of abominations lumbered towards him.
We have no time for this. We must find our way out quickly. You have my thanks, ladies. But where is your mistress? Where is Sylvanas?
She sent us to find you, great king. We've come to escort you across the river. Once we cross it, We'll take refuge in the wilderness. This is the place, sisters. We'll rest here, Great King.
Why here? We've got to find Kel'Thuzad before we...
You have been deceived. Come to my side at once. Obey me.
What is happening here? Sylvanas.
You walked right into this one, Arthas. It's time to even the scales.
Traitor! What have you done to me?
It's a special poisoned arrow I made just for you. The paralysis you're experiencing now is but a fraction of the agony you've caused me.
Finish me, then.
A quick death? Like the one you gave me? No. You're going to suffer as I did. Thanks to my arrow, you can't even run. Give my regards to Hell, you son of a bitch.
Back, you mindless ones! You shall not fall today, my king.
This isn't over, Arthas. I'll never stop hunting you.
The effect of her arrow will wear off in time. All the preparations for your journey to Northrend have been made.
You have been a loyal friend, Kel'Thuzad. I don't know what the future holds, or if I'll even return. But I want you to watch over this land. See to it that my legacy endures.
I shall, King Arthas. I shall.
He trusted the Lich, not out of affection or loyalty, but simply as a cold hard fact. Kel'Thuzad was an undead thing, bound to the master that they both served, and as Arthas' journey took him to Northrend and eventually merging with Ner'zhul, Kel'Thuzad remained behind to keep an eye on the Plague Lands with Naxxramas as his base of operations. He would go on playing a massive role in the story of the Ashbringer, in which Alexandros Mograine he obtained a mighty and holy blade which he wielded against the forces of the Scourge. Not all of humanity had been wiped out quite yet, organizations rose up to fight against them, so something had to be done about this threat. As luck would have it, Alexandros had two children, Darion and Renaud Mograine, with the last one falling to corruption. He was persuaded to lead his father into a Trappist home, where countless undead were waiting to strike. Mograine kept slicing them down one after the other, until countless turned into only a few, and even those few fell before the Ashbringer. The battle had been endless, Mograine was tired, and he had dropped his weapon. This was the opportunity that his son had been waiting for. As Renaud appeared, he picked up his father's blade, and he stabbed him in the back. Alexandros was betrayed by his own son, and even worse, this plan was created by Balnazar and Kel'Thuzad. Apparently Kel'Thuzad was able to work together with the Dreadlords, and instead of just murdering Alexandros, they decided to turn him to an ally of the undead. They took the body back to Naxxramas and they started to torture him, convert him. Images of his deceased wife, the pain and grief of losing his beloved, all of it was turned against him. Love is nothing but a childish fantasy. Learn this lesson and learn it well. Hatred and despair are the only truth of existence. I only harbor resentment for you. And Darion, your beloved son, the cursed filth who stole my life, taken away into the hands of death. The other child stabbed you in the back, only harbors hatred for you, and would kill you again and again and again. Further resistance is pointless. Your will is no longer your own. Who do you love? No one. And who loves you? No one. He was ready for the next step, being forged into a Death Knight by Kel'Thuzad. The Ashbringer now turned from a holy weapon into a corrupted blade. Darion would eventually discover that his father might still be around within Naxxramas, so he grabbed the raid team and they went in to try and save him, but his father was already far too gone and the only option was to put him down. With the corrupted Ashbringer in hand, Darion then left Naxxramas, but Kel'Thuzad wasn't done quite yet. He led a massive army in an assault upon Halight's Hope Chapel, but by stabbing himself with the blade, making an ultimate sacrifice, the heavens opened up and the day was saved. Not all was lost though. A brand new wielder of the corrupted Ashbringer found his way to Kel'Thuzad, the son taking over the role of the father. We wouldn't see that storyline until Wrath the Lich King. First there's still classic World of Warcraft, in which we, like Darion and his raid team, we assaulted Naxxramas ourselves. When I say we, I mean a very small portion of the player base, because getting into Naxxramas, it was not easy with the whole reputation requirement or the insane price for the attunement quests, as well as a bit of frost resistance gear that you had to get. Once inside, the fun could begin with 4 different wings and some spicy encounters, but raiders, they took on the challenge all the same until they unlocked access into Kel'Thuzad's domain. But the Lich did not come alone. Portals to Northrend allowed for some of the army of the Scourge to come in. The Lich had some tricks of his own, but all the same, the heroes were able to defeat Kel'Thuzad and collect his phylactery. This is what a Lich binds their soul to, and it allows them to be resurrected over and over again. Or if you take care of the phylactery, you can kill them once and for all. The first boss in Scholomance, that is a good example of that, and Kel'Thuzad's phylactery started the quests. The phylactery is all that remains of the Master of Naxxramas. Your better judgment dictates that you destroy the phylactery, prevented the Lich from ever reforming. Thankfully, you seldom listen to that internal voice of reason. Someone at Light's Hope will pay you hugely for this artifact. Who cares if Kel'Thuzad regenerates to full power? And that is exactly what happened. Heroes handed over the phylactery to Father Inigo Montoy for some very sweet rewards, to which Montoy, he betrays the Argent Dawn and he brings the phylactery to the Lich King. As a reward, he too became a Lich known as Talzin the Dustbringer, and Kel'Thuzad was reformed, ready to have another go at it during Wrath the Lich King. In the Borean Tundra, Horde players discovered that it's Kel'Thuzad leading the Scourge in the area, and they informed Garrosh about what they've seen. Eventually, heroes of both the Horde and Alliance, they ventured forth into Naxxramas once again. It was all very similar to what went down during Classic, but of course also a little bit different, since the raid size, it became a lot smaller, and the 4 Horsemen, they recruited a new member to replace Alexandros Mograine. All the same, we went into the 4 different wings, the Construct Quarter, the Military Quarter, the Arachnic Quarter, and the Plague Quarter. With each victory earned, the voice of Kel'Thuzad echoed across its halls.
I grow tired of these games. Proceed, and I will banish your souls to oblivion.
Despite the big talk, we were still able to conquer Naxxramas. Some even rubbed it in a little bit more for poor Kel'Thuzad by murdering his beloved Mr. Bigglesworth.
Now! A curse upon you, interlopers! The armies of the Lich King will hunt you down. You will not escape your fate.
Look what you did to Mr. Bigglesworth!
The mighty dragon Sephiron is the last enemy standing in our way, and then we can finally confront the Lich.
Your forces are merely marshaled to strike back against your enemies, my liege.
Soon, we will eradicate the Alliance and Horde. Then the rest of Azeroth will fall before the might of my army.
Yes, Master. The time of their ultimate demise grows close. What is this?
Invaders, here. Destroy them, Kel'Thuzad. Naxxramas must not fall.
As you command, Master. Minion servants! Soldiers of the Cold Dark! Obey the call of Kel'Thuzad.
First, we must take care of waves of undead with skeletal soldiers, soul weavers, and abominations. Abominations created by Kel'Thuzad, since what could be more useful than a gigantic, malformed monstrosity with perfect loyalty and a ferocious hunger to devour their enemies. After taking down a small army, Kel'Thuzad himself jumps into the fight with ice, shadow, arcane, and even a bit of mind control. But at 45% health, he realizes that he could use some aid, and he calls for his master.
Master, I require aid.
Very well, warriors of the frozen wastes, rise up. I command you to fight, kill, and die for your master. Let none survive.
Guardians of Icecrown are teleported in, and the longer that they stay in the fight, the bigger and more powerful they become. Yet all the same, Kel'Thuzad was unable to hold his ground, and he fell to the heroes of Azeroth once again.
Do not rejoice. Your victory is a hollow one. For I shall return with powers beyond your imagining.
This time, he was a little bit smarter, and he did not keep his phylactery on him, and we have no idea where it currently is, so a return of Kel'Thuzad, that is definitely possible. The mage, whose curiosity and lust for power, it led him to a road of damnation, from which there was no return. He unwillingly pledged his loyalty to the Lich King, and then spread the plague across the lands of Lordaeron. Who knows when or how, or what he might do in the future, but for now, this is where the story of Kel'Thuzad ends. He is extremely popular though, as he's been adapted into a card for Hearthstone. He was part of the Curse of Naxxramas Hearthstone adventure.
This next fight will not be easy. I hear the boss is all powerful and very handsome.
He has his very own tavern brawl with revamp.
Of course I played well. I'm Kel'Thuzad.
And now he's a hero within Heroes of the Storm.
Yes. Well done, minions. Now, bow before Kel'Thuzad!
Hello everyone! A couple of you requested if I could do the story of Lilian Voss, and I would love to, but to understand the story, we first had to talk about Sylvanas and the Scarlet Crusade. The Scarlet Crusade was created from members of the Order of the Silver Hand. These were the first paladins who joined the alliance against the Horde, but when the plague hit Lordaeron and Arthas turned to the dark side, the Order lost a lot of members. A new organization was formed with not only paladins as members, and they called themselves the Scarlet Crusade, with their main mission was to cleanse the land of the Scourge. Seydan Davrohan was one of the first members of the Order of the Silver Hand, and he was a founding member of the Scarlet Crusade. During an attack on Strathholm, he was killed by the Dreadlord Belnazar, and Belnazar didn't just want his life, he also wanted his body, so he could infiltrate the Crusade from within and deal some serious damage. For example, he's responsible for the Headless Horsemen, he's responsible for Mograine being betrayed by his son and the corruption of the Ashbringer, but most of all, he further destabilized an already very unstable organization. In time, he would drive them so crazy that the Scarlet Crusade would no longer be able to see the difference between Scourge and innocence. Some of the members, they saw that the Scarlet Crusade was losing its vision, they were blinded by pure vengeance, and they moved away to form the Argent Dawn. So at this point we have two organizations in Lordaeron that are both fighting the Scourge. We have the Scarlet Crusade, which is corrupted and insane, while the Argent Dawn stays true to the mission. Now for Sylvanas. For those that don't know, Sylvanas used to be a high elf and she tried to defend her kingdom of Quel'Thalas against the Arthas and the Scourge. A traitor from within opened the gates for Arthas, and Sylvanas was unable to stand against his forces. He didn't just kill her though, she had annoyed him so much that he decided to rip her soul from her body and turn her into a banshee. That way she would be forced to obey him, watch her people get slaughtered, and even help Arthas finish the job with her banshee scream.
Finish it. I deserve a clean death.
After all you've put me through, woman, the last thing I'll give you is the peace of death.
No, you wouldn't dare.
Over time, Sylvanas would regain control. Ner'zhul's powers were draining out of him, and since Arthas was being empowered by Ner'zhul, he too lost a significant portion of his powers. Sylvanas used this opportunity to collect her body and take revenge, but she didn't want to take him out with just one blow. She wanted Arthas to suffer as much as she had, so she shot him with a poisoned arrow which would stun him but not kill him. This was a huge mistake on her part, since Kel'Thuzad he showed up just before she was able to do any more damage, and she was forced to retreat. This gave Arthas the opportunity to escape, make his way to Northrend, and get ready to merge with Ner'zhul.
You seem troubled, mistress.
Aren't you, sister? Only days ago we were the Lich King's slaves. We existed only to slaughter in his name. And now, we are free.
I don't understand, mistress. I thought you'd be overjoyed.
What joy is there in this curse? We are still undead, sister. Still monstrosities. What are we if not slaves to this torment?
Sylvanas wasn't the only one who managed to break away from Arthas, and the Scourge that were able to do this, they allied with their new queen and called themselves the Forsaken. They took Lordaeron, they created their Undercity, they allied with the Horde, and they planned a revenge against Arthas while he succeeded in becoming the Lich King. Several years passed until the Wrath of the Lich King expansion, in which we took the battle to Northrend and we took care of Arthas.
Father, is it over?
At long last. No king rules forever, my son.
I see. Only darkness before me.
Sylvanas wasn't personally there when we killed Arthas, but she did pay a visit to the top of Icecrown once the battle was done. Up on the top of Icecrown, she made a disturbing discovery as she found out that a new Lich King was placed on the throne, but she didn't really care. Her revenge was done, her Forsaken life goal was complete, so Sylvanas decided to jump, kill herself and find eternal bliss. It's sad to say, but heaven is not waiting for Sylvanas. She ended up in Warcraft's hell together with Arthas, and she was about to endure an eternity of torment. The Valkyr, who were bound to the new Lich King, they showed up and offered Sylvanas a deal. They would ally themselves with Sylvanas, they would offer their power of resurrection and take her place in hell, and in exchange they would be free of Bolvar's control. It's up to speculation if the Valkyr have an alternative motive, but for now they serve the Banshee Queen. And it's a good thing for the Forsaken that they do, since Forsaken troops before the Cataclysm were those struck by the plague and who wrestled themselves free from Arthas' control. That's not an unending supply of troops, so now with the Valkyr at her side, Sylvanas has the power to create her own Forsaken.
War Chief, so glad you could make it. With the death of the Lich King, many of the more intelligent Scourge became unemployed. Those fiends, as you so delicately put it, are called Valkyr. They are under my command now. And they are part of the reason that I asked to see you.
Get on with it, Sylvanas!
Very well, War Chief. I have solved the plight of the Forsaken. As a race, we Forsaken are unable to procreate. With the aid of the Valkyr, we are now able to take the corpses of the fallen and create new Forsaken. Agatha, show the War Chief!
What you have done here, Sylvanas, it goes against the laws of nature. Disgusting is the only word I have to describe it.
War Chief, without these new Forsaken, my people would die out. Our hold upon Gilneas and Northern Lordaeron would crumble.
Have you given any thought to what this means, Sylvanas? What difference is there between you and the Lich King now?
Isn't it obvious, War Chief? I serve the Horde.
Watch your clever mouth, bitch!
There is another difference between Sylvanas and the Lich King, which is that Sylvanas offers them a choice. They can either join her, they can return to the grave, or they can leave the Forsaken and follow their own goals. One newly created Forsaken named Lilian Voss was given that choice, but she couldn't deal with being an undead. In life, Lilian was the daughter of High Priest Benedictus Voss, member of the Scarlet Crusade. Her whole youth was dedicated to training in the arts of stealth, sorcery and martial arts, giving up anything to make herself stronger and turning herself into a weapon against the Scourge. The World of Warcraft Ultimate Visual Guide states that Lilian died during a battle with the Forsaken. No details are given about the battle or how exactly she died, but the Forsaken have been fighting the Scarlet Crusade ever since Classic. That means that somewhere along the line, somewhere that we were killing all these Scarlet Crusade members, we actually killed Lilian, her corpse was collected, and she was resurrected as one of the Forsaken. Not everyone takes being turned into the undead as good as the player does. Some of them lose their mind, some start a rebellion, and some just can't accept their fate. Lilian runs away terrified, claiming that she can't be an undead. Not now, but she truly is. You even give her a mirror to look at herself, but Lilian refuses to accept her fate. She makes her way to her former allies, the Scarlet Crusade, thinking that surely her daddy will still love her and keep her safe. While you're questing as a Forsaken, while you're killing a few of the remaining Scarlet Crusade, you find a letter sent by Benedictus Voss. In this letter, he says that he finds it strange that they captured his daughter and not instantly killed her. All undead are the same in his eyes, and she's no longer his daughter, and he orders Lieutenant Gebler to execute her. We find Lilian inside her cage, and she still believes that once word reaches her father, he will help her out. Just at that moment, Gebler makes his way up the tower, and he tells Lilian the news. The time has come, my little captive. Word has come back from your father. High Priest Voss denounces you as a daughter. He has ordered that you be executed immediately. The High Priest sends his regrets. He had hoped that one day you'll be a powerful weapon against our enemies. Unfortunately, you were too dangerous in life, and you're far too dangerous in undeath. I will enjoy killing you, you scourge witch. Remember that Lilian was raised to be a killing machine, and pissing her off like that was not the best decision. She used her magic, and she used her fighting skills to jump out of her cage, and she murders Gebler. She then claims that although the world of the living may have turned its back on her, she's no damned scourge.
Beware the living.
Instead of keeping her as an ally, the Scarlet Crusade actually turned her into their worst enemy. Later on, we find another letter that tells that Benedictus Voss has put out a hit on his own daughter. The Crusader who returns his daughter's head to him will be rewarded with 1,000 gold, but Lilian is no easy prey. As we continue our questline, we find a Scarlet encampment with all the members burned to a crisp and their lieutenant dead, hanging upside down on a chain. From the shadows, Lilian whispers that she could instantly kill you if she wanted to. She explains her story and she wants to pay a little visit to her dear old dad. We get to join her and witness how easily she takes care of any Crusader, and in the tower her father's guards die instantly. Lilian finds her father and she confronts him with what he has done. You raised me to be a killer. How am I doing, Daddy? But wait, I remember now. You taught me only to kill the undead. So do you want me to kill myself, Daddy? Then again, why kill myself when I can kill you instead? Lilian picks up her father, she jumps up the tower and she chokes the life out of him. This takes care of the immediate threat, but there are more Crusaders still alive, so Lilian's next target is the Scarlet Monastery. She disguised herself as a hooded Crusader as she puts us on the task of killing as many Crusaders as we can and collecting the Codex of the Crusade. The Codex contains a list with every known member of the Crusade. This is valuable knowledge for someone who's on a mission to kill them all, but Flameweaver Kugler is busy burning all the information.
Everything must burn! None shall know the Scarlet Crusade's shame!
He wants to burn down all the Crusade's records in an attempt to hide their corruption and shame. We manage to kill him before he burns down everything, and Lilian gets her hands on the Codex. That's one part of the plan done. Next it's time to kill High Inquisitor Whitemane. The reason for this is that Whitemane is the one who keeps on resurrecting those members that we kill. As you can see during the fight, she has this mass resurrection ability, so to end the Crusade, we'll have to end her. To kill her once and for all, we stab her with the 2 anointed blades who are resting within the monastery. With the deed done, Lilian shows up, she reveals herself and she takes the 2 rune blades for herself. They'll definitely come in handy, especially since she's going to take the fight to Scholomance to deal with Dark Master Gendling. On our way to Scholomance, Lilian burns down a Crusader camp, and you might wonder why is she going to Scholomance? Well, Lilian hates being undead, she hates the fact that she's resurrected, and she wants to save anyone else from a fate similar to hers. Scholomance used to be in the hands of the Barov family, but they made a deal with the human mage Kel'Thuzad. Kel'Thuzad was an agent of the Lich King, and he was working on spreading the plague through Lordaeron and the formation of the Cult of the Damned. In exchange for the home and land, the Barov family will be rewarded with immortality, and the Lich King actually held up his end of the bargain. He killed them, resurrected them, they were immortal. Putting an end to this school would be a heavy blow against necromancy, but I personally think she also did it because this is pretty much the birthplace of the plague that hit Lordaeron. Without the plague, Arthas wouldn't become a Death Knight, and the Scarlet Crusade would never have existed. Which means that the reason why she didn't have a normal childhood, why her father wanted her dead, was because of this place. That's just my interpretation, so take that as you will. Either way, we find Lilian inside of Scholomance fighting an army of undead while she's trying to reach Dark Master Gendling.
My dear, it appears we have visitors. Friends of yours, Voss?
You there! Make yourselves useful and deal with these summoners.
Their deaths only serve to empower my summoners further. Behold!
Feed their souls to their brethren? You are sick.
What's the matter, Voss? Getting tired?
Never stop hunting your kind, Necromancer. Never!
Isn't it beautiful? The weaving of flesh and bone and soul.
We'll see if you revel so much in dead once I've ripped out your throat.
You too are beautiful, Voss. Have you looked in a mirror recently?
Pay for your tongue.
My dear, you should embrace this gift that has been bestowed upon you.
I will not let you curse another soul with this nightmare. Run, Necromancer. Your life ends once I catch my breath.
Come, Voss. Your fate awaits you.
We take out Redogor and we follow Lilian.
Did you forget, girl?
I am the Dark Master. I command the undead.
I won't let you.
Now turn your lovely rune blades on our guests and fetch me their bones.
I can't fight him.
I can feel her will breaking. Now, Lilian, it is time for your transformation.
End it now, before he can.
Your soul is mine!
The Dark Master uses his powers of necromancy to rip Lilian's soul from her body, and that has to be painful. Now this incredibly powerful Crusader is turned against us, but we manage to smack some sense into her, she breaks Gendling's control, and she attacks the Necromancer.
Why let a perfectly good corpse go to waste? Oh, how intriguing. Her spirit will not relinquish his grasp in this world.
My soul, it burns!
How does it feel, Voss, to watch them hack your mortal body to pieces? What?
Die, Necromancer!
The bones! Oh, you wretch!
Leave me to die alone, please.
Lilian asks of us to leave her and let her die alone, which of course means that she didn't die at all. Lilian is still alive and kicking somewhere, so she still has a part to play in the story. What we see in all of this is that Lilian, she hates the Scarlet Crusade and she hates necromancy. The Scarlet Crusade is pretty much gone now, and since Lilian knows all their names, I'd imagine that she's currently busy with killing off those remaining few. She is also taking care of the main school of necromancy, so that leaves the question, what is she going to do next? Who would be a prime target for someone like Lilian Voss? And since the new Lich King is pretty much on our side, that leaves only one main target. The one who brought back Lilian in the first place, Sylvanas, her Valkyr, and the Forsaken. If they're ever going to deal with Sylvanas and all the things that she's doing, then I'd imagine that Lilian would have a big role to play in that story. This could be as a spearhead against Sylvanas, this could be as a plot twist as one of her most powerful lieutenants, or perhaps she'll be the one who finally saves Kel'Thuzad from Undercity. For those who've ever quested through the Death Knight starting area, who have done the Battle for Anderhall, you might remember Sylvanas taking this Death Knight into the Undercity. He wasn't fully obedient, he had an allegiance with the Alliance, so Sylvanas wanted to take care of that, and this was back during the Cataclysm. Ever since then we haven't heard about him, so who knows what Sylvanas been doing, what she's planning, and what she wants to do. We know that Sylvanas, her one motivation currently is to stay alive, and I can't wait to see where they might take this story, what they might do with Lilian, since she's one hell of a badass. I also wouldn't mind like a short story which explains how Lilian's human life was. The Crusader who tried to kill her on top of the tower said that she was too dangerous in life, which gives the idea that maybe her father set her up to die, maybe some of the Crusaders were like, okay, she's a little bit too powerful. It has a lot of room for some amazing storytelling.
Do not tempt my wrath.
That's all speculation though, and we'll have to wait and see where the story is going to go. They said at BlizzCon that they're not going to deal with Sylvanas during Warlords of Draenor, so Sylvanas, the Scourge story, Return of the Lich Queen, all of that is still waiting for us.
Hello everyone. Wowhead has been hard at work at data mining the next patch, and as it turns out, a shiny new model for Calia Menethil has popped up. You might remember seeing her during Legion, but quite a lot has happened to her since then. What better reason than to sit down and talk about her story, what has happened to her, and what might she do in the future.
Sometimes I miss the beautiful court of Lordaeron and my father.
When thinking of the name Menethil, you probably think back to Arthas Menethil, the prince who fell to darkness and became the Lich King. Calia is his sister, meaning that she does come from royalty, and she grew up in the capital of Lordaeron. Now, despite being 2 years older than Arthas, being a woman meant that the crown of Lordaeron was not meant for her. We do know that she met Jaina Proudmore, and they became very close friends. Once, Miss Proudmore was even said to become her sister-in-law. Was it not for Arthas getting cold feet, we might have seen a beautiful wedding take place in Lordaeron. Prince Arthas had the privilege to choose who to give his heart to, a privilege that was not extended to Calia. At the age of 16, the king, her father of course, Tirion Menethil II, he arranged for her to get married to Davil Prestor, a very charming noble with a mysterious past that manipulated events at the court. Unknown to most was that Davil Prestor was actually the Black Dragon aspect Deathwing in disguise. He was using his draconic powers to hold sway over the king's mind. In tears, Calia told Arthas how lucky he was that he was allowed to fall in love, rather than being sold off like some broodmare. Again, we nearly had an epic wedding, but Deathwing's plans, they were prevented, which allowed Calia to seek her own path in life. While her father focused fully on her brother, she had her own quiet rebellion and fell in love with someone that her father would never approve. One of the footmen. That's all the description we get, which makes some people wonder if there's perhaps a connection between Calia, Bolvar and Talia, but to describe Bolvar as just a footman even in that time period, I'm not saying it's impossible, but I don't really think it fits. Either way, Calia fell in love, and after begging for a very long time, they were wed by a priestess, blessing their union in the light. When she was certain that she was carrying, she told her mother Lyanne everything. Her mother was furious, of course, but she could also tell that this was a true love and decided to help her daughter. She gave birth in the more remote parts of the kingdom. A beautiful little girl that she could take care of for a few weeks, before it was decided that her husband would raise the child away from Lordaeron and ignorant of her birthright. When the time was right, when Arthas had finally married and produced an heir, they could acknowledge her daughter and perhaps even elevate her husband to a nobleman's status so that her name would be unsullied. That day never came, but the Scourge surely did.
What is this? What are you doing, my son? Succeeding you, father.
Arthas had made his journey to Northrend, had picked up Frostmourne, and returned home as an agent of the Lich King. For many, many years, fans wondered what had happened to the other members of the royal family. Some just assumed that they'd all been murdered by Arthas and his forces, while others, they held out hope that they might have escaped, might have survived the sea of death that washed over the land.
I once hid in a muddy ditch for 2 days while slavering ghouls patrolled the area. Your prattle does not faze me.
She doesn't remember much at the time, besides lying in a ditch while the Scourge passed above her. With the grace of the light, she found a way safely to Southshore, where her husband and child had been hidden away. Luckily enough, no one in town actually recognized her. Everyone assumed that she was dead. For a time, they were happy in Southshore. And then came the Blight. It's a vague description to try and figure out a time period for this. Personally, I assume that they're talking about the Forsaken attack upon the town of Southshore that transformed the town with the Cataclysm. But there has been some debate over this. Either way, the attack with the Blight, it forced them to run again. She didn't want to leave her family behind. Not again, but in the crowd they were separated. I stood in the middle of the street, screaming for them. Someone took pity on me, pulling me onto his horse and galloping past the limits of the town, barely in time. There was a cluster of refugees in the forest. So many of us waited, desperate for word of our loved ones. Sometimes, prayers were answered. I prayed that my family too would be spared. But her voice trailed off. I never saw them again. Somewhere during all of this, she met up with Archbishop Alonsus Val, who's responsible for the creations of the Knights of the Silver Hand, the paladins amongst the Alliance. At times, he's been a leader of the church, then a mindless minion of the Scourge, but he was able to regain control and become a commander in a secret war. We don't know the details about this war, that is why it's a secret, but he's always been a priest first, able to bring Calia back from a very dark place. He showed her that not all of the undead are evil beings, that there was a difference between the Scourge and the Forsaken. Some of her old friends were still alive, even if it was a cursed undead kind of living. Perhaps the family she had lost was not entirely gone. And then, fast forward to the Expansion Legion, where we saw Calia pop up for the first time, and she played a critical role for the priest in the Order Hall. After the Legion's defeat, she met up with King Anduin Wrynn, and a plan of reconnecting the living with the Forsaken was born. After all, if priests from all kinds of backgrounds were able to put aside their differences and work together in the Order Hall, perhaps there was hope of reconnecting the living and the undead. That was the idea anyways. A story told in the novel Before the Storm, which I have covered in greater detail. Now ultimately, Sylvanas actually goes along with this plan of meeting up within the Arathi Highlands. For some, seeing what happened to their loved ones, seeing them walk around as an undead, it was too much to handle. They turned away before they even had a chance to talk. But others, they had a fantastic day, and they did not want this moment to ever end. Now Calia, she was at this meeting. She had promised that she had no intention of reclaiming Lordaeron. She was just Calia now, and her home had been lost many years ago. Yet, when the Forsaken recognized her and asked her to stand with them, to help them keep this day going and abandon Sylvanas for the Alliance, she decided to stand with them. "I am Calia Menethil," she shouted. "Head for the keep." This was not what they had agreed on. No one had expected her to make such a drastic move. Not even herself. The Forsaken heard the signal sound of the retreat, calling them back home. Some of them ignored it entirely. They kept running, while others had no intention of betraying the Dark Lady. She was their ruler, their queen. They would not betray her, not even for Calia Menethil. But despite running home at the sound of the signal, they were shot down all the same. Sylvanas did not know if those that came back to her, if they did so out of fear. How tempted were they to stay until that point? She couldn't take that risk, that sentiment for a life long gone, that hope to grow. It's an infection ready to spread, and she has to cut it out. She also knew that Calia rising up like that it wasn't Anduin's doing. The boy king, he wasn't that stupid. This was all on the head of that Calia girl, and she was going to pay. The Banshee Queen herself fired the arrow that took Calia's life, despite Anduin rushing the field, trying to save her. The war chief was smart enough not to start a war quite yet. She'd only shot down her own people, her own Forsaken, and Calia, who wasn't part of the Alliance. Neither side started a war that day. However, this would not be the end of Calia's story.
In the light we are reborn.
After that disastrous meeting, her body is brought back to the Netherlight Temple, which is the Priest Order Hall, where a couple of days later, Anduin meets up with Alonsus, and the Naru Saara, the being of light, spoke to them. Calia would come to me when the dreams of what was past were too painful to endure. I cautioned her to have patience. There were things she had to do before the dreams would cease, things she must understand, people who would need her help, and I assured her of this seemingly strange truth, that sometimes the most beautiful and important gifts come wrapped in pain and blood. There will be no more of those battles for her now. Calia Menethil will be freed from the pain of the living, from the nightmares that once rent her heart. She understood that those on the field were her people, and she accepted her responsibility by giving her life to try to save them. Not human, as they were when she was young, but forsaken, as they were in that moment. Light and dark, forsaken priest and human priests. Together you shall bring her back as the light, and she herself would have her be. Anduin didn't know what the Naru had meant by those words, and he suspected that Val didn't either. But somehow he knew Calia did. Anduin and Alonsus, they act as a vessel for the light, until Calia's cold hand squeezed that of the king. Anduin gasped as Calia opened her eyes. They glowed a soft, gentle white, not the airy yellow hue of a Forsaken's. A smile curved her face that had no flush of life to it. Calia Menethil was dead, but she lived. She was no mindless undead, but she was not Forsaken either. She had been raised by a human and a Forsaken, both using the power of the light, bathed in the radiance of a Naru. Anduin watched as everyone responded to Calia's. What? Resurrection? No, she was still dead. Dark gifts? That wouldn't be accurate either, because it was the light that had been present today. There was nothing of darkness in this undead woman. Then, Anduin and Calia, they get a chance to speak again. She explains that ever since she had met Val, she believed that one day, if given the chance, she could show that even though she was not Forsaken, she could treat them as her people and rule them well. Her brother had tried to destroy them. All she wanted to do was help them. When word of the gathering reached their ears, she thought that this was the way to do so. Meet the Forsaken who were not priests and see how they would react to meeting their families again. That was all she had intended for the gathering, but when she was given the choice, when she was asked for help, she could either support them and reveal who she was, get them to safety, or disavow them and get them killed. She looked away. But I got them killed anyway. Even worse, she nearly started a war. She could have been responsible for the deaths of hundreds of thousands. She understands that now. Her only excuse is that she was never taught on how to rule. That was the job meant for Arthas. She never formally studied politics or strategy, so when she was out there, she just followed her heart, a luxury that a ruler doesn't always have. Perhaps with time, she will learn. But for now, she knows that she's not ready to rule. She does wishes to serve the people of Lordaeron. She still sees them as her people. And now, with this resurrection, the undead body infused with the light, she's like them. It feels right. And from the Archbishop, I'll learn what it is like to be this, to be undead, yet walk in the light. It should have been harrowing, it should have been ghoulish, but as Calia Menethil, changed but still herself, gazed at the King of Stormwinds, all Anduin could think of were the Naru's words. Calia was freed forever from the nightmares that had haunted her, and he was glad. It was the only comfort on one of the bleakest days he had ever known.
Walk in the light.
That's where Calia's story ends for the moment, whereas the book is then followed by the events of Battle for Azeroth, meaning the war between the Horde and the Alliance. The Arathi warfront, it did show that the events of the book, they took place, as you can find the graves for the Forsaken, whereas Calia's fate, it wasn't mentioned until after the Battle of Zandalar.
It is good to have you back with us, Auntie. I missed you.
So much transpired while I was away. Anduin, I've heard rumors about an old friend of mine, Calia Menethil. What happened in Arathi?
There is much to explain. Some I still don't fully understand, but I'll tell you what I know.
Thank you. Let's find somewhere quiet to talk.
This means that Jaina is aware of what happened to her childhood friend. Now throughout the Horde's war campaign, they're sent beneath the waves, where they stumble upon the body of Derek Proudmore. He's Jaina's brother, died defending the world against the first Horde invasion. He's brought back by the Dark Lady with the intent to twist his mind, turn him into a weapon that will rip apart the Alliance from within. Bane Bloodhoof, leader of the Tauren, he can no longer sit idly by and watch Sylvanas destroy everything that he stands for, everything that he believes the Horde stands for. Behind his war chief's back, Bane leads a rescue mission, a successful one at that, as Derek is reunited with his sister.
So much has changed, Derek. There is something I must tell you.
I know about Father. The Horde spewed lies to poison me against you, but Bane explained the truth of what happened. You, Mother, and Tundred all endured so much. I'm pleased you have each other again, but where does my path lead?
I don't know. But we will find the answer together.
I can't come home, can I?
No, not yet. But I know others who have been through this. I believe they can help you.
Will you come with me, Jaina? I don't know if I can do this alone.
Of course, Derek. No matter the storm, we will face it as family.
It's not a certainty, but considering that Jaina is aware of what happened to Calia, and the Priest Order Hall houses those that share a similar fate to Derek's, I imagine that he's now hanging out there, hanging out at the Netherlight Temple, together with Alonzes and Calia. It's anyone's guess what that might mean for the future of the story. A story that's apparently going to be further told as Calia's undead model that has been data mined from patch 8.2.5. That's all we have really, just a model to look at. But knowing that they have gone through the effort of giving her a unique model, that means that she'll have her part to play. Now anything goes when we're talking about the future, so keep in mind that this next bit is going to be speculation, and by all means, I'd love to hear what you think. What do you think the story is going to bring next? So, as it stands right now, Sylvanas Windrunner, the leader of the Forsaken, she wanted vengeance for what Arthas had done to her. She accomplished this goal at the end of Wrath the Lich King, to which they had to give her a new motivation, a reason to keep going. They decided to have her kill herself and end up in hell, which then led to the bargain with the Valkyr. They'll take her place in hell, keep her going, even raise more Forsaken, and in exchange, they will be free from Bolvar's control. Over time, we saw Sylvanas become more and more like the thing that she had fought against. In the case of Derek, she worked very hard on taking away his free will, one of the things that Forsaken held so dear when they decided to sign up and serve Sylvanas. If you remember how Lilian was brought back to life by the Valkyr and she did not decide to join the Forsaken, nobody really made a problem out of that. That choice was always given. But the goal that Sylvanas chases, staying alive and staying out of hell, it has pushed her to go further, to take away that free will. Now don't get me wrong, she definitely cares about the Forsaken, as we can read in Before the Storm. She doesn't want to inflict further pain or suffering upon her people. Yet at the same time, her compassion, it does have a limit. They're no longer her arrows in a quiver. They are her bulwark against the infinite. She cares, but she cares about staying out of hell a whole lot more. So much so that she decided to start a war with the intent of wiping out the Alliance. Apparently, time breaks all bonds, so negotiating with the Boy King, it would only be a temporary solution. The invasion into Darkshore, that was to remove a big threat against her, a plan that failed and eventually backfired. Sylvanas wants to stay alive and will do everything it takes to conquer death. That is her motivation at this point in time, unless of course they're gonna pull this whole new big motivation that's not been mentioned yet. If that's the case, then okay, cool, the story can go in many different directions, but for now, we know that Sylvanas wants to stay alive. This war against the Alliance, pushing the Horde further and further, it has the Horde rise up against her, similar to the days of War Chief Garrosh Hellscream. He was kicked out of the mantle of War Chief, but he wasn't killed. Instead, they placed him on trial, which then led into the next expansion. Now, I find it extremely difficult to predict what they're going to do with Sylvanas, but I cannot imagine her staying on as a War Chief. So what does that mean for the leadership of the Forsaken? If the Alliance and the Horde are no longer aiming their weapons at each other, but instead they focus on Sylvanas, what does that mean for the Forsaken? In an RTS setting, I'd assume that the Forsaken, they stand with their Banshee Queen, they stand with the Dark Lady, but this is World of Warcraft. You can't really remove or exclude one of the factions, as people, they're still going to need their characters and their friends to play with. Just think back to Garrosh. There were definitely orcs that were loyal to him, loyal until the end, but the orcs that we play as, they automatically fell in line with what the majority of the Horde was doing. So considering this WoW setting, what would be the motivation for the Forsaken to stand with the Horde? Well, maybe they could open their eyes to the events in Arathi and Sylvanas shooting down all of the Forsaken, even those that tried to run back. Perhaps open up their eyes to the removal of free will that she's been playing around with, that the Dark Lady is becoming more and more like Arthas the Lich King. Not to mention that there's also the whole bit of some force plotting to make her the War Chief, and some force messing about with votes in spirits. It's a lot of stories seeped into the afterlife, seeped into Undead, and a lot of unexplained things. But of course, a bigger question would be, where would Calia fit into this story? As a Menethil, she'd have some claim to Lordaeron, that beautiful capital city that was sieged by the Alliance and blown up by Sylvanas. She's even called Queen in Before the Storm. Would the Forsaken be able to look past the parts that her family royally screwed them over and placed the curse of Undead upon them? Maybe. It's not like Calia had any say or active role in the plague hitting their lands. Her brother's actions hurt her as much as anyone, not to mention that she could offer a new way of being undead, a new way of being Forsaken. Calia taking over from Sylvanas, that could definitely make sense in the storyline if given enough time to develop. Now I do have my doubts that the player base would actually enjoy that choice, and you could argue that having Calia as a leader of the Forsaken, that would nullify pretty much any real tension left between the Alliance and the Hordes. Or perhaps that's actually a good thing. Perhaps it's time to focus less on that faction war and unite against the big bad again. N'Zoth is free and roaming about. It should take all of our time and effort to rise up against that threat, rather than fighting each other and realizing down the line that working together is so much better. And as a final argument and reasoning for making Calia the leader of the Forsaken, that would be to keep the Forsaken going. In the past, the Forsaken were made up of those that had fallen to the plague, to the actions of Arthas and the Lich King, but they were able to regain control. With the Cataclysm, with the new motivation, Sylvanas gained the Valkyr as her allies. Now she is the one that's resurrecting, adding troops to the ranks. But still, they give the newly raised Forsaken a choice on what they want to do.
War Chief, without these new Forsaken, my people would die out. Our hold upon Gilneas and northern Lordaeron would crumble.
Have you given any thought to what this means, Sylvanas? What difference is there between you and the Lich King now?
Isn't it obvious, War Chief? I serve the Horde.
Now say that we do take care of Sylvanas. This could be she's killed, she sacrificed herself, we make her run away, there's some rebellious faction going on. Anything that would remove her out of the position of leadership. Let's not forget that then we also take out those last Valkyrie remaining, and where would their allegiance be? During Legion, we saw Sylvanas looking for the power to create more Valkyrie. The Forsaken, they cannot reproduce. She had to find some way to keep her people going. So, if the events don't go in her favor and the Valkyrie, they stick with Sylvanas, or they're all wiped out, the Forsaken, they're going to need some way to be resurrected, or we're gonna run out of Forsaken to play with. If they're given a new leader, a new path and motivation, perhaps it's then time to also give them a new way of being resurrected. In a similar way as Calia was brought back, light-infused Forsaken, a customization option that you can turn on, so you have the option to be an old-school Forsaken, or one of the new generation. This way, they can let go of the motivations of the past, answer the question as to why the Forsaken should keep going, a question that was also raised in Before the Storm. Now that would mean some massive changes to the Forsaken and its player base. Calia is such an opposite of Sylvanas, the Dark Lady and the Light Lady. I'm personally a bigger fan of someone like Lilian taking control, but all of this is definitely a direction they could take. Now, as I'm writing this, I do very much wonder how much the player base would actually enjoy this story direction, and if it receives enough development in the expansion to actually make sense. Battle for Azeroth is nearly over, and if Sylvanas is removed and then Calia is placed in that position, I wonder if that's not too quick of a switch, because most people that haven't read Before the Storm yet, they don't even know that Calia is a light-fused undead. Yet at the same time, it's incredibly difficult to see what they're going to do with Sylvanas, what the point is of the story. I can't imagine her staying on in a leadership role, yet at the same time, can we imagine a Forsaken without the Banshee Queen? I personally really can't. It's difficult to predict, but of course, this is just one path they could follow. The future is still unwritten, and I honestly can't wait to see what they have in mind.
Hello everyone. Before we begin, a little heads up that also counts for all the Order Halls that are still to come. I am going to tell you the story of the Order Hall campaign, but I've already encountered some minor differences here and there between either factions or artifacts or some minor changes that could happen. Since leveling every character to 110 takes enough time as it is, I simply don't have the time to do it for both factions, so please keep that in mind. There might be some minor differences to your experience with the campaign, and if you find any that I missed, please let me know in the comments. Just wanted to make sure that you're aware. With that out of the way, let's talk about the Death Knight campaign. Death Knights have gone about collecting their artifacts, which they will wield in the campaign against the Burning Legion, and upon return to the Order Hall, Darion Mograine lets everybody know who's the boss.
It is time you are given a position that befits your accomplishments.
Knights of the Ebon Blade, assemble as we honor one of our own. Before us this day stands our comrade in arms. You have all heard the legends of countless battles fought, of trials overcome at great cost. Her exemplary deeds in the name of the Ebon Blade have shown her to be one of the best of us, worthy of our highest honor. By the will of the Lich King, and upon my authority as High Lord, I declare that this champion wielder of the blades of the fallen prince, will henceforth be known as Death Lord of the Ebon Blade. You will all bow to her as you once did to me, and carry out her will against the Legion!
Darion is happy that it's not him that was chosen by the Lich King to wield the weapon, since he's done with having magical weapons dictate his fate. This goes back to the time where he used the Ashbringer to sacrifice his own life in exchange for saving his father's soul, and by doing so, he was turned into a Death Knight and forced to obey the will of the Lich King while wielding the corrupted Ashbringer. Who wants a weapon like the Ashbringer anyway? Silly paladins with the titles of High Lord. Death Lord is way edgier and way cooler. We upgrade our weapon with the claimed souls of our defeated enemies, as well as some artifact power, and we choose our first assault point upon the Broken Isles.
The greatest heroes on Azeroth have gathered to face the Burning Legion. But heroes alone will not save this world. Salvation will come at a price the living cannot pay. The time of the Four Horsemen has come, and you will bring about their return. Nazgrim, the fallen general of the Horde, shall be the firstborn. Go now and see that it is done.
The Four Horsemen will ride again, and the first time that we saw them was during Classic within Naxxramas. The group back then consisted of Thane Korthas, who held the power of flame, Lady Blameau, who could call forth the power of shadows, drawing souls of the living into voracious embrace, and Sir Ziliak, a paladin in life so strong in faith that even in undeath, the power of the light still heeded his call, smiting his foes in battle. Their leader was actually Darion's father, Alexandros Mograine, who was taken by Kel'Thuzad after he was betrayed by his eldest son, who took the Ashbringer, stabbed him in the back, and corrupted the blade. As I mentioned earlier, Darion sacrificed himself to save his father's soul, and he did this after adventuring into Naxxramas himself and taking out the Four Horsemen. Death is for the living though, and not the damned, so the three horsemen returned during Wrath of the Lich King, only now they were led by Baron Rivendare, who could formerly be found within Strathholm. They too met their end, and this time by the hands of adventurers, nobody else to claim victory, they clear the wings of Naxxramas, and now there is need for the horsemen once more. This time, not to be the pinnacle of Kel'Thuzad's guards, this time to safeguard Azeroth, and the first one to join the ranks is Nazgrim.
The Four Horsemen. I have my reservations, but I will obey your will, Death Lord. The Horde will be outraged, but Nazgrim will make a powerful Death Knight.
Once a grunt, in service of former Warchief Thrall, General Nazgrim rose quickly through the ranks after overwhelming victories in Grizzly Hills and the sunken city of Vashj'ir. Fiercely loyal to the Horde and bound by a rigorous code of honor and duty, Nazgrim will hold the line for his Warchief until his dying breath. That's the dungeon journal description for Nazgrim, and he was a raid boss during Mist of Pandaria. In that expansion, Warchief Garrus Hellscream was a threat to the world. The Horde and Alliance, they teamed up to siege Orgrimmar, but Nazgrim was so loyal that he couldn't step away, and we ended his life. He deserves the peace of death. But this world cries out to be saved. The time for rest is over. Let's welcome Nazgrim into the arms of the damned.
Nazgrim, your Death Lord calls. Feel the icy grip of your master, and rise once more.
I live again. How long has it been since I tasted death?
Long enough, my friend. The Burning Legion has returned, and you have been called to the battle.
Say no more. I will sever their heads from their bodies.
Indeed you shall, General. Indeed you shall.
The Horde might be furious by our actions, but Nazgrim understands what's at stake, and he, together with Visarion, they become part of our champions, ready to be sent out on missions across the Broken Isles.
We do what the living cannot.
The first mission is critical for the growth and power of our order, as we send them out to seek new candidates for the Ebon Blade. They return with Dark Summoner Marroch, who allows us to raise packs of ghouls to assist our champions on their missions. Now that we bolstered our numbers, we display our might by taking on some of the sea giants, and once that mission is complete, Archiver Subashi arrives in the Order Hall, granted the ability to upgrade good old Acris. Now if we're going to have the 4 horsemen to ride with us, then they'll need something to ride on. Salanar the Horseman, the same Salanar that provided Death Knights with their very first mount so long ago, he will be perfect for the job and should be found somewhere within the Realm of Shadows. One trip to this realm later, and Salanar is informed about our need for his skills. He'll show up at the Order Hall later on, and we'll meet him when he does. Now it's time to focus on recruiting the 2nd horseman.
The time of the 2nd horseman has come, Deathlord. Upon the cliffs of Erethdor stands the fallen kingdom of Stromgarde. It is there that you will find the tomb of Thoris Trollbane, the great warrior king. His strength in battle was without rival, and he shall be even more powerful in Undead.
Thoris Trollbane was one of the greatest kings this world has known. The Alliance will not be pleased. Nevertheless, your will be done, Deathlord. The Ebon Blade will be honored to bring King Thoris into our fold.
It seems your Deathlord has finally arrived.
You should watch your tone, Galen.
Prince Galen is willing to help us with gaining access to the tomb if we help him with his Widowbark problem by cutting down a couple of the trolls and destroying their supplies. This is obviously not the Trollbane that we came for. Our Trollbane was a freaking badass during his time within the Alliance of Lordaeron, when Paranold, another member of the Alliance, when he betrayed their faction and he allowed the first horde safe passage through his mountains, he basically handed over the planet on a platter. It was Trollbane who realized what was going on. The horde at the time was laying siege to the capital city of Lordaeron, but Trollbane made his moves and he held back reinforcements for the Horde army. He played a big part in the victory of the Alliance. The Horde was eventually defeated, and in times of peace, the Alliance of Lordaeron started to fall apart. The High Elves of Silvermoon, they turned their back on them, and eventually Gilneas and Stromgarde, led by Trollbane, they did the same. Time passed away, and so did Thoris Trollbane. Now news of his death reached the Horde, and it was Vol'jin who instructed players to go to the ruins of Stromgarde, find the legendary sword Trollkalar, and take it out of the humans' hands so that they could use it in a conflict against the trolls of Zul'Gurub. The sword had been in the Trollbane line for generations, going back all the way to the Troll Wars, and it was sealed away within Thoris' tomb. In order to unlock the tomb, they had to collect sigils, and one of these sigils was in the hands of Prince Galen Trollbane, which they then murdered, and the troll Zengu took the sword from the tomb with the intention of using it against the trolls of Zul'Gurub. That's not where the tale ends though. Despite many fans wishing for Danav Trollbane to claim the kingdom, and Danav is Thoros' nephew, instead we saw the Forsaken, under the orders of Sylvanas, resurrecting Galen as an undead. Turns out that on his way back, the troll Zengu was actually cut down by humans, and the sword was simply reclaimed. We joined Galen as he served the Dark Lady, and he obtained the blade, a weapon to bring death to the living in the name of the Dark Lady, or at least so they thought. In truth, Galen just sought to reclaim the weapon and his kingdom, and now we find him ruling his ruined kingdom of Stromgarde. After fulfilling his request, we return to hold him to his end of the bargain.
Stromgarde is mine at last. You are fools if you think I'll let my father have it back. Guards, seize them!
King Galen has made a big mistake by wasting our time and trying to betray the Ebon Blade. If he will not open the tomb of his father, then we must take the sword and do it ourselves.
My patience has worn thin as well. Let's find the prince and be done with this.
You are fighting against a power you cannot even comprehend.
Stromgarde is mine! I will not give it up to my father or anyone else. I am the prince! How dare you!
With the blade, we can enter the tomb and resurrect King Thoros, one of the greatest warriors this world has ever known. His people loved him and enemies feared him. He only spoke truth, often saying the words others were afraid to speak. He lived a life of war and certainly deserves the peace of death. But this is not a man who would sleep peacefully while the world around him burns. The time has come to welcome the lost true King of Stromgarde into the arms of the dead and damned.
My son, where is Galen? Where is the prince who murdered his king?
We took his life, my lord. The prince left us little choice.
What has become of Stromgarde?
Death and ruin. Time has not been kind to this place.
Then I have failed as both a father and king.
Stromgarde is lost, but there is still hope for this world, if you will join us.
I will do whatever it takes to preserve peace on Azeroth.
So it was actually his own son that took his life, and Trollbane will stand at our side in the defense of Azeroth.
We do what the living cannot.
Before we continue with one of my favorite Order Hall campaigns, we first have a side quest that's, in my opinion, a little bit disappointing. Vasarian asked for our aid in rescuing Koltira, who was taken captive by Sylvanas during the Cataclysm, as she found out that there was a friendship between these two Death Knights, and she thought that it was a weakness. For years, fans speculated on where this might take us, what Sylvanas might do to him, but it turns out to be something that Blizzard is not interested in exploring further. We simply go into the Undercity, we kill a couple of ghouls and blobs and Gurgoth until we find the cage.
We are here to free you at last, my brother.
Vasarian, is it really you? It has been such a long time.
Indeed, it has. We must hurry before the guards come.
And that's it. The only thing different that I could spot was the removal of Koltira's tattoos, but I think that was just a glitch. When you speak with him back at Icarus, he just says that he's thankful, he knew that the Ebon Blade did not forsake him, and he does not wish to elaborate on his years in captivity. That time has passed, and we are now presented with imminent danger from the Burning Legion, and that's it. It's a little bit disappointing to see this story arc die like that, but what can you do? And it doesn't take away from the overall awesome story arc that goes on within the Order Hall, since Icarus has some visitors. Korka's Dedex has shown up offering additional Death Knights. We're not just creating Uber Horsemen, we're also making more Death Knights, and the Lich King would definitely be proud of Icarus, while Selenar has also finally arrived. He tells us that the unholy bond between horseman and steed must not be taken lightly. Power begets power, and he can forge an inseparable bond between rider and steed, but components of great power are required. For the reins, he'll need a braid, a dark shamanic adornment in the possession of Darkrul the Underking. In order to subjugate the dark steeds of the apocalypse, he will need a nightmare lash with the power to suffocate all hope, all light from a living soul. The Shade of Xavius carries this one with him, and the third and final component is a Maul of the Dead. With it, he'll be able to craft a barding, armor so strong, so impenetrable, no demon shall break it, and the Maul is in the possession of the fallen Queen Helja. It's up to us to personally collect these components, while our champions, they got their own ingredients to collect. They go out to collect the saddle of Invincible, the former steed of Arthas, which was lost beneath Icecrown. The saddle used by Sir Thomas, also known as the Headless Horseman, buried in the cemetery of the Scarlet Monastery. The saddle of Deathcharger, former steed of Baron Rivendare, which, upon his defeat, was returned to Stratholme. The saddle of Midnight, the steed of Attuman the Huntsman, found somewhere within the ruins of Karazhan. And finally, the Shadow Reins, used by Grave, an ancient dark rider. With that grocery list done, the Lich King reports in with the name of the third horseman.
Inquisitor Whitemane was a priest whose personal tragedy forged an intense connection with the light. Her zealous power of will is necessary to strengthen the bond of the Four. Travel to the Scarlet Monastery and raise the High Inquisitor from her tomb inside the cathedral.
There are few in this world who have lived with more conviction than High Inquisitor Whitemane. Death has a way of quelling the madness of the mind. I'm sure she will serve the Ebon Blade without compromise.
We have a single purpose here, to raise Sally Whitemane as a Death Knight of the Ebon Blade. But while we're here, we also take care of the remaining Scarlet Crusaders, and we use their fallen against them by resurrecting them as ghouls.
The Scourge has risen against us. Send the invaders back to their graves! Should you fall, know that your sacrifice will bring me great glory this day!
Are there none among the Scarlet Crusade with the strength to challenge me?
At a young age, Calia Whitemane witnessed her family succumb to the horrific plague of undeath as they were traveling through northern Lordaeron. She was then forced to destroy her own parents and siblings when they rose as mindless Scourge minions, leaving her wrecked by guilt and rage. Ever since that day, the fearsome priestess have found fulfillment and pleasure in only one thing: the destruction of undead. She eventually found her way into an organization called the Scarlet Crusade. Now, those that followed Alexandros Mograine back then, they had a clear vision, cleansing their land of the undead. But as you know by now, Alexandros was betrayed by his eldest son Renaud. It was the Dreadlord Balnazar who had taken over the body of Seyden Davrohan, and he convinced Renaud that this was the best course of action. For his betrayal, Balnazar rewarded Renaud by making him the first commander of their organization, and that organization was called the Scarlet Crusade. These were the most fanatic when it came to cleansing their lands, and they thought that the order should remain pure, while others, amongst them Maxwell Therosis, they realized that they were becoming too fanatic. They stepped away, and they formed their own organization, the Argent Dawn, and this is the organization that Darion Mograine joined. Now, as you might imagine, an organization ruled by a Dreadlord from the shadows, that can only mean doom, and several times heroes ventured into the monastery to take care of the Crusade, and several times the Crusade simply crawled their way back in. During Mr. Pandaria, we teamed up with Lilian Voss, and we pierced Whitemane's corpse with the Blades of the Anointed, said to be able to permanently kill Whitemane, and they did. Until this moment, until the Knights of the Ebon Blade have need of her.
Those who terrorize the innocent have no place in this world or the next. The realm of shadow offers little respite to the souls of the wicked.
Trollbane has taken it upon himself to coat the walls with Crusaders' blood, and it simply looks amazing.
You defile the sanctity of this chapel with your presence. The holy light shall burn you! By the power of the light, I will banish you, Scourge! My faith has forsaken me?
Death can bring a silent peace to the soul, but not for Sally. Her death is one of regret and unrest. We will offer her the chance to atone for her crimes. The price will be high, but they have little doubt that she'll pay it.
Rise up, High Inquisitor. Your Death Lord calls you back to this world.
I live? Is the anguish of death over?
We have not come to offer peace, High Inquisitor.
Why then? Why have you done this to me?
The day of reckoning is at hand. The Burning Legion has come to destroy our world. The Knights of the Ebon Blade have come to offer you a chance at atonement.
Atonement? I doubt that such a thing exists for me.
Join us, and we will find out together.
Indeed we shall.
There is no greater hatred and scorn in this world than that would exist in Sally's heart. The Burning Legion will pay for all that they've taken from her. The day of judgment awaits, but theirs is at hand, and she will be the executioner's blade. She will not rest until every demon lays dead, their corpse paving the very ground she walks.
We do what the living cannot.
The third Horseman has been recruited, and the preparations for conjuring their steeds of the damned is nearly complete. 5 unholy essences, known as the Aggregates of Anguish, are required for the ritual, so our champions go out to collect them from souls in the Shadowlands. There is the Essence of Undeath, taken from Grand Apothecary Putris, the same Putris who betrayed Sylvanas during Wrath of the Lich King, leading into the events at the Wrath Gates and the battle for Undercity. The Essence of Fear, taken from Grand Empress Shexir, the Mented Queen who was taken over by the Shah of Fear during Mr. Pandaria. Then there is the Essence of Hatred, taken from none other than Admiral Dalen Proudmore. This is Jaina Proudmore's father, consumed by thirst for revenge when his son was murdered by the orcs, and I assume that when his daughter led the orcs into Fettermore just simply kill him, I assume that did not help. Then, the Essence of Darkness, taken from Arugal, who summoned a Worgen in the defense of Gilneas, and unfortunately the Worgen turned on their people, causing them to live as Worgen themselves. And finally, the Essence of Shadow, taken from Soulbinder Niami. This one is probably the most interesting, since Soulbinder Niami, she's a Draenei that betrayed her people during Warlords of Draenor. And then we take her out within Akendun. She came from alternate Draenor, which means that this realm, the Shadowlands, it transcends realities. On top of that, we can also find out why she betrayed her people, since the quest reward is a letter from Exarch Maladar. The letter begins, "Dear Niami, it is with regret that I must tell you that your son is amongst those kidnapped by the orcs. we fear the worst. So either she was blackmailed, or the worst actually happened to her child. Lost with grief, she turned to the dark side, and she teamed up with the Legion. It's up to us to fill in those blanks, but I thought it was a very, very nice detail to add to this questline. So as we work on the grocery list, a couple of minor questy things happen. We unlock the ability to research the history of our artifacts. We complete world quests to meet the increased aggression from the Legion. The Ebonblade is very happy with our leadership, so they give us a helmet. We collect body parts, amongst them the Eye of Cordana, which is then used to create Rotgut.
Rotgut.
Then we're sent into the Eye of Azshara to collect an ancient amulet called the Frozen Soul, created by Queen Azshara herself. From it, we learn that the Dwarf of Azshara, the end boss of the dungeon, it was created with the frozen soul of Lysande, a handmaiden who loved the queen so much that she sacrificed herself to become vengeance incarnate. Upon returning the item, Amalfazad is so happy with us that he decides to become our champion.
We do what the living cannot.
We are done. There must be one among the four horsemen with the power to lead. Without a leader, there will be no unity among the four. The time has come for the Ebonblade to return to Light's hope. The body of the great Tirion Fordring rests beneath the chapel. Go now, and do what must be done.
The Knights of the Tirion Fordring was one of the greatest champions this world has known. If we do this, there will be a price to pay. I will obey, Deathlord, but know this. Should we go through with this, there will be no turning back.
The fourth and final horseman, the one that would lead them all into battle, has been chosen by the Lich King to be Tirion Fordring. Once, when Arthas was still the Lich King, he also sent Darion and his Death Knights to Light's Hope Chapel, not in any hope of victory. He was fully aware that their lives were forfeit, but he also knew that it could draw out the Great Paladin Fordring and take out this enemy of light. Darion prevented that from happening as he tossed the corrupted Ashbringer to his old friend, and by touching it, Tirion purified it, brought it back to his holy state. He forced Arthas to retreat from Light's Hope Chapel, and eventually he shattered the blade Frostmourne. As most of you know by now, Tirion lost his life on the Broken Shores, and it seems like history is about to repeat itself, only now Tirion will be unable to defend himself.
Interred just beyond those walls is the body of Tirion Fordring, one of the greatest champions our world has known. The Silver Hand will not give him to us willingly. So, we will take him by force! Deathlord, we will begin at your command. There is a tomb behind the chapel, where the power of the light is weak. Raise the dead from within the tomb, and it will distract the guards long enough for us to make our way to the chapel.
Tread carefully, Death Knight. This is holy ground, and we have little tolerance for your kind. My lord, we're under attack! It's the Ebonblade!
Tyrion's body rests below us, in the Hall of Champions. We will join you shortly, Deathlord.
You will not succeed, Darion. The light will not allow it.
It's Lady Liadrin holding down the fort as we fight her in the Halls of Champions. It seems like the High Lord is out questing elsewhere, possibly find the Legion, but Liadrin is not the final line of defense.
Without monsters, there can be no heroes.
The time has come, Deathlord. Tirion Fordring awaits. At last, the four horsemen shall have their leader. What is this? No! I will not allow the Ebon Blade to fall! The Death Gate. Take it!
The light itself protected one of its greatest champions, and Darion heroically sacrificed himself to get us out of there. You'd imagine that the Lich King would know that the Light's Hope Chapel is simply untakeable, or perhaps he actually did.
High Lord, we must do something before it's too late.
The light has ravaged his body. There is nothing we can do for him.
Even in a lifetime of war, I have never before seen such sacrifice.
Darion Mograine has sacrificed more for the Ebon Blade than any other. His body lays before you, broken, scarred. But death is for the living. It has no power over the damned. Your fourth horseman lays before you, Death Lord. Command him to rise.
Darion can see now what he did not see before. His destiny was written long ago, and like his father before him, he will take position as leader of the Four Horsemen.
Horsemen! Our destiny is at hand! The Burning Legion shall tremble before the power of the Four Horsemen!
I really hope that we could get one of those horses for the Death Lord as well, because they look amazing. Either way, the Four Horsemen have obtained their mounts, they've come together under the leadership of Darion Mograine, and they're ready to defend the world of Azeroth against the threats of the Legion. Hopefully, the Paladins back at Light's Hope Chapel, hopefully they won't hold a grudge.
Death Lord, we have all watched in awe as you cut a swath through our foes with your ancient weapon. Your legend grows, and it is fitting that the fearsome artifact you wield increases in potency as well. By infusing the resources you've gathered with the souls you've claimed, the Forge will unlock the true potential of your weapon's destructive might. It is done! Against your strength, the Legion will surely fall!
And that's where one of my favorite Order Hall campaign ends. That's where the Order Hall campaign for Death Knights ends, at least for the moment. I really hope you enjoyed it, everybody. And considering how long it took me to make this one, I can't wait to cover every single Order Hall campaign that Legion has to offer. For now, thank you very much for watching, everyone. Subscribe if you like my videos, leave a like if you enjoyed this one, and until next time, guys, see ya!
The darkness does not die. Rage against the nightmare. Struggle as you will. The infinite dark is patient. We will all be claimed in the end. See the spirits writhe and twist, the numberless shades forsaken by time. The dead outnumber the living, and always will. So many fallen kings, silent in their numberless graves. Even the mighty are rendered nameless by time. Every king must kneel before death. You believe that you are in control, that your will is your own. Yet you do as he commands. You exist by his whim alone. You imagine yourself to be free, but you will always be his instrument.
Hello everyone! I personally remember Nathanos Blightcaller as a badass quest during Classic, but recently he has been quite elevated and giving a much larger role in the story. But what was the road that led him there? That is what we're going to find out.
Make it quick!
Nathanos was not always the undead as we see him today. In his lifetime, he was known as Nathanos Maris, the first and only human ranger lord in existence, trained by the High Elves themselves. There were quite a few that weren't too happy with a human amongst their ranks. Kilfa Sunstrider, Lord from Artheron, Haldoran Brightwing, all of them had spoken out against him, questioned if he should be allowed to be amongst them, but all of their complaints were ignored by Sylvanas Windrunner, the Ranger General of Silvermoon. To her, Nathanos was one of the most gifted rangers that she had ever had the pleasure of training, and like her sisters, Illyria and Verisa, she too felt affection for the human. But make no mistake, his appointment as Ranger Lord, it was truly based on skill. His accomplishments were unprecedented, a tactical genius, responsible for Alliance victories spanning a decade of conflict. But that success streak would unfortunately come to an end when the plague spread across the lands of Lordaeron, and we saw young Princess Calia Menethil. He walked the path of damnation into service of the Lich King. The kingdom that his father had ruled for 70 years was ground into dust in a matter of days. Sylvanas tried to protect her home and loved ones, but was no match for Arthas of Frostmourne. She gave her life, but the prince would not let her rest. He raised her as a banshee, and she was forced to follow his command. Nathanos tried to hold the line at the Marisstead, the house where he had lived most of his life, but with Stratholme already fallen, the little farm stood little chance. It was Ramstein the Gorger. You might know him as one of the bosses in Stratholme. The abomination took his life. Next thing he knew, Nathanos woke as a Scourge, his mind bent to the will of the Lich King as well. For quite some time, he and Sylvanas, and so many other resurrected undead, they lost themselves. They became the very thing that they had fought against. Yet Sylvanas would not stay bound to Arthas. She would find the opportunity to break free again, recover her body, and try to claim revenge. Sadly for her, those plans didn't work out that well. Arthas was saved by Kel'Thuzad and called to Northrend, where he would merge with the Lich King, leaving behind the kingdom that he had brought to ruin. Now liberated, Sylvanas made her plans of claiming the vengeance that she desired. Most like her, the fallen undead that were forsaken and able to free their minds, they found their way to the Banshee Queen, while others, they were called into her service. The world swam through a thick, smoky haze. There was no reason, no sense, only hatred. A hatred rooted deep in the corners of his mind, its tendrils twisting, vine-like through his fetid core. The man he had been was murdered, his blood now salt in the farmlands he had once called home. This creature might inhabit the dead man's body, but it possessed no will of its own. It didn't need one. It existed only to serve the Lich King. He turned back to the ground, where the half-consumed corpse of his latest victim lay. A warm rush of strength flowed into his body as he ripped a mouthful of flesh from her throat. He remembered the ecstasy that had gripped him as her screams grew quiet, the terror that froze in her dead eyes as he devoured her. Craving that sensation again, he tore off another bite. Had days or years passed since he'd been raised? It mattered not at all. Time was the burden of mortals, and the Master's gift had freed him from it. A singular purpose now drove his every action, a compulsion to spread the plague of undeath through the fallen kingdom of Lordaeron, to ravage the very lands his human soul had loved. Were there room for aught but malice in his heart, he would have laughed long and loud at the irony. He stopped feasting, and he waited. He waited because it was his master's will that he do so. A moment passed before he sensed it. The unholy magic that had reanimated his own lifeless body, it now caused hers to stir. He watched in rapturous wonder as the corpse that had been his victim arose as Scourge, as driven to end life as he was. She looked at him, the fear gone from her undead eyes, replaced by smoldering rage. She might have been smiling, with her ruined jaw not dangling by scant strips of flesh. He might have smiled back, but for the shock of arrows that came crashing into her skull. The body of his new companion crumbled into a heap, headless and twitching. He spun to face their attackers. 3 cloaked figures loomed before him. Some part of him recognized their weapons and knew how deadly a bow could be, but those memories were vague and fleeting. He didn't care about the useless notions still lingering in the dead man's mind. Hatred welled up, demanding to be unleashed. As he tensed to leap forwards, the middle target barked out an order. In unison, the flanking pair took aim and sent a rain of heavy, blunted arrows thumping into his legs. He fell hard to the ground. Each time he tried to rise, more arrows pummeled him back down. Damnable creatures. He did not pause to reason why the cloaked figures hadn't ended him as they had the woman. He only longed to sink his teeth into the bits of flesh exposed between the pieces of the dark armor. When they rose as Scourge beside him, their bows would be unnecessary. Hatred would become their weapon as it had become his. He sniffed the air to stoke his hunger, but the scent confused him. His foes were neither humans nor elves. They weren't living at all. They were as dead as he was. Why would such creatures stop him from fulfilling the master's will? The fear and frustration of a beaten animal. It gripped him as shot after shot kept him on his knees.
Nathanos.
A female voice called out his name. No, that name was dead, left to fester upon the plagued soil of the Maris dead. How dare this creature evoke its memory? Rage roiled in his gut, hot and thrashing. He would kill the interloper, feed upon her flesh, sate his hunger for death. But something in the cloaked woman's voice held him fast. His name had become a command, and with that single word, she reached down into the fury that had taken the place of his soul and caught him tight in her grip. No, the hatred, the master's will. If these three would not serve, they would be destroyed.
Nathanos.
She called again. This time in the wailing voice his master's banshees used in battle. The intensity of it startled him. Had she been sent here by the Lich King's command?
Nathanos.
With the third sounding of his name, recognition skidded across his mind and chased the cloud of fury away. That voice, of course, Sylvanas. As she pulled back her hood, the sickly yellow light of the Plaguelands illuminated her elven features. Skin, once fair and full of life, had turned to ashen. Hair that had shone like spun gold looked dull, lusterless. Her bracing blue-grey eyes now smoldered red. A swell of sorrow choked his throat as he realized that Sylvanas too had fallen. But his heartbreak gave way to awe at the terrible majesty her new form held. In life, he had always thought she had the bearing of a queen. In Undead, she radiated the might of a goddess. His eyes drifted down to the mottled skin of his gnarled fingers, stained deep red by his recent kill. A rush of shame banished the thrill of this reunion with Sylvanas. The thought that she would see him like this, a decrepit, nightmarish mockery of his former self, filled him with disgust. Almost of its own volition, his forearm rose to hide his rotting face. Sylvanas, he rasped through parched lips. His voice sounded foreign, and he realized it was the first word he'd spoken ever since his death. Conscription to the Lich King's service. It never required him to speak, only to kill. I have come for you, Nathanos, to call you back to my side. He was not worthy to stand with her, to even look upon her, yet her strength, her power, it enthralled him, compelling his arm to fall away so his eyes could meet hers. You see what I have become, he growled. Why would you want such a master to serve you? Sylvanas waved her hand as it dismissed the bits of pulpy corpse strewn about the ground. I am building a new kingdom, Nathanos, made up of the forsaken dead freed from the Lich King's thrall. You will become my champion, and together we will call down a blight of suffering upon him. Arthas will answer for his crimes. A wicked sneer twisted his fallow lips. The insidious fog of control was gone, and he clenched his fist at the thought of taking revenge upon his former master. Anger and hatred still consumed his heart, but his will was again his own. No, not his own. It was hers, just as it always had been. The Dark Rangers attending Sylvanas tensed as Nathanos rose to his feet. He took a step forward, then bowed his head. I am yours, Dark Lady, for all my days.
For the Dark Lady.
And so, Nathanos Maris became Nathanos Blightcaller, champion of the Banshee Queen, eternally loyal and devoted to her. He recruited heroes to fight in the Plaguelands, and getting some vengeance by butchering Ramstein in Stratholme. The Alliance, they also investigated the Maris deaths, but the best field agents ended up dead, so we had to figure out what was going on. At first, their assumption was that the Blightcaller was the one responsible, was perhaps even the one who would murder Nathanos Maris. But soon enough, they figured out that the Blightcaller and Nathanos, that they were one and the same. Order must be restored. Massive raid parties, they grouped up in the Plaguelands, and they took on their former ally, now turned undead. But the Blightcaller, he was clever, and he played possum that his enemies believed it to be gone for good. Nothing could be further from the truth though. And now, within the Undercity, he would train new generations of rangers to bolster the Forsaken troops. Now being undead meant that their former lives were over, yet not all the strings to that life were cut. Nathanos had collected relics from the Battle of Darrowshire and hidden them away at his home. He also had heroes collect the Quel'Thalas registry, which contained an entry from Sylvanas herself about admitting him amongst their ranks. The effects of Arthas and the Scourge, it led to the High Elves becoming the Blood Elves, but not all of them agreed with the new way of life. Not all of them were down with draining magic from objects and creatures. They were exiled and they found their way to the Quel'Thalan Lodge. It was there where a copy of the registry could be found. And the Blightcaller, he told the members of the Horde, the imbeciles, to leave as much strife and grief as possible in their wake. To leave them suffering. And suffer they did. "We come in the name of the champion of the Banshee Queen," they said when they arrived. "You have something that belongs to him." They took it by force and slaughtered any of the rangers in the lodge that they could find. A tale that Lord Marfaron, he only found out much later, and he was shocked to hear about it. Despite being the one to exile them, he never wanted them dead. He just couldn't leave the kingdom divided, and he wondered if Sylvanas knew about this attack, and if she did, does she still care? Doubtful. As the Banshee Queen, she was more focused on the coming war in Northrend and taking care of the Lich King. Arthas had taken everything from her, and with his defeat, she felt like her mission had been accomplished, and it was time to embrace that eternal bliss. By dropping herself from the top of Icecrown to the Serenite spikes down below, she ended her undead life, but she did not find peace in death. Instead, she ended up in a realm of eternal torment. She might still have been there, was it not for the Valkyr, who offered her a deal. They would take her place in hell, even allow her to resurrect more Forsaken. In return, they would be free from Bolvar's control, they would be free from the new Lich King. The bargain was made, and the Banshee Queen returned after witnessing the fires of hell. Only to Nathanos had she entrusted the tale of that day, of what had happened to her. Though she refused to say the words, he knew her well enough to recognize when true fear gripped her heart. Her ultimate fate, it puts a fear into Sylvanas, a fear of death, which pushes her to do anything and everything that it takes to stay off that fate for as long as she can. And yet, if his queen had been lost, there would be no reason for Nathanos to continue this mockery of a life. If she were condemned to an eternity of torment in the darkness, at least he could end his own existence and endure damnation at her side. But his queen had other plans in mind. She wanted to keep on going for as long as they could, and with the coming of the Legion, she needed her champion to be strong. The power of the Valkyr, it will preserve her body for ages to come. But his, once human form, like those of her other Forsaken, it will not enjoy such longevity. He could already tell that the strength in his hand had waned. There was enough sinew remaining to grasp a bow and to teach even the clumsiest of his pupils how to knock an arrow. But his undead flesh continued its inevitable decay, and there would come a day when his hand would be rendered useless or rot away altogether. That's where the Valkyr come in. Arthas once forced them to raise Death Knights for his army. That was a much more potent ritual than the one with which they now transform fresh corpses into Forsaken. Not only that, they can also use their powers to reshape his body and make it stronger and more enduring. He wondered if the Valkyr could do this for all of their people, but Sylvanas told him no. Without the Lich King's energies feeding them, she believes that it requires a portion of their own essence to succeed. She turned towards him. "But it is my desire, so it will be done." He stepped closer to the Banshee Queen, and he watched her expression. He told himself it was for the delight of provoking her again, but that was a lie. He wanted something more. If the Valkyr can only do this once, why choose me? Was it pain that flashed in her eyes? If so, it lasted only an instant, replaced by resolve and a will of unbending iron. "I told you, the Legion threatens to consume us all. I require my champion at my side." It was doubtless petty, this satisfaction that he sought, but something raised within him whenever she addressed him by the title. "Then tell this creature to hurry up," Nathanos snarled. "I have rangers to train." Now this ritual, it required fuel to work. Fuel in the form of his cousin, who had known them both in life, and he had managed to survive the Scourge. Captured by the Forsaken, he was strapped down and used to empower their champion. Nathanos' world exploded in a cacophony of fire and pain. So very much pain, but the results were definitely worth it. He swung his legs off the side of the stone ritual table. A slight gasp escaped his lips as he stood, steadying himself on limbs that didn't quite feel his own. Like a child unwrapping a gift, he yanked the glove from his left hand and stared in awe as he flexed his fingers. There was no protruding bone, no dangling flesh or torn muscle. Not a living hand, but it was whole and it was strong. A hand worthy of the Queen's champion, Nathanos decided. He reached up and he touched his cheek. Instead of the desiccated paper-thin skin that hung loosely from his skull, he found plumper flesh. His fingertips explored a jawline adorned with wiry whiskers. Nathanos marveled at the sensation. It felt almost like touching a human. Almost. Sylvanas might have played it off as just needing her champion to be strong, but others that pay attention, like Dark Ranger Anya, she could tell that there was more play. In life, Sylvanas had defied a kingdom to name him Ranger Lord. In death, she had scouted the Plaguelands to reclaim him from the Scourge. And today, she had drawn upon her most precious resource to restore his strength. Think upon these things, Blightcaller, and tell me how someone so cunning can be blind to the simplest of truths. Nathanos glared at her, his jaw clenched tight. Within moments, the bemusement retreated from her face. Foolish Ranger. The Queen did not entertain such trifling notions, nor did he. Whatever emotions his mortal heart might have held, now it had only room for rage and contempt. He was Nathanos Blightcaller, the champion of the Banshee Queen. He almost smiled as he thought of the chaos that he would unleash upon her foes. That was what he told himself, and perhaps before the ritual, that was definitely a truth. In the past, he had lingered at his farm on orders from his queen, luring her enemies to the slaughter. He had taken special delight in tormenting the high elf rangers of the northern foothills, the very Farstriders he had once served alongside and commanded. Their haughty outrage bled away as they died, or twisted into a garish grimace upon those raised into undeath. And through all of it, no matter how noble the hero, or how close a friend his victim might have been, Nathanos felt neither pity nor remorse. He felt nothing. He had done his duty, one to which he was well suited. His victories had earned the Dark Lady's favor. There was nothing else he could ever conceive of wanting. Yet now, after the ritual, they walked to the armory to get him a new outfit befitting of his station, and there, the glinting of lamplight on polished metal, it drew his eye to a cluttered armor rack. He moved a few pieces aside to reveal a finely wrought breastplate that was clean and well maintained. His thoughts drifted back to the ritual, to his cousin, to the empty altar next to his, to a choice. For the briefest of moments, he felt the touch of something foreign, unsettling, a sensation absent since the day that he had died, a weakness of mortality that had imperceptibly stalked him and had at long last found his throat. Nathanos felt regret. But with the Legion at the doorstep, the story takes us to the Broken Shore, where the champion of the Banshee Queen does everything in his power to make her wishes and commands come true. Nathanos, he felt regret afterwards, but with Gul'dan opening up a gateway for the Legion at the tomb of Sargeras, there was little time to linger on those feelings. We saw the Alliance and Horde teaming up, with Varian leading the Alliance assault, and surprisingly, it wasn't War Chief Vol'jin. Instead, we saw Sylvanas leading the Horde. It was their hope to nip this threat in the bud, but instead, the Legion, it proved to be far too powerful. The Horde was eventually forced to call the retreat after many of the great heroes were brought low. Even War Chief Vol'jin was mortally wounded by the demons, and he decided to pass on the title of War Chief to Sylvanas. Varian in turn, he was forced to sacrifice himself to buy his people the time they needed to escape, and the Horde's retreating, that was seen as a massive betrayal by some amongst the Alliance. It was his son Anduin who took up the mantle of leadership, and with the Legion threat still looming in the distance, it became our job to scour the Broken Isles and gather the Pillars of Creation. With these ancient relics, we should be able to seal up the gateway at the tomb of Sargeras, but it's Nathanos that points us towards the War Chief, who lets us know about another objective as we go into Stormheim.
I think often about our future, hero. My people cannot reproduce. Are we not destined then to wither away eventually? No. The Forsaken will never stop fighting. Not while I reign. Not when there are still beings out there with the power to stop death.
There's more power to be found in Stormheim besides the Pillar, the power to create more Valkyr. Seeing how these beings are the ones responsible for keeping her out of hell, and also her means of creating more Forsaken troops. This is, of course, a great prize for Sylvanas. But the Alliance get wind of their plans and isn't too happy with the War Chief. Again, Greymane, he lost Gilneas and his son to the Banshee Queen, while Rogers, she lost her home on Southshore to the Blight. So both of them are very keen on striking out at the Horde, and they do so when the opportunity presents itself.
Damn it! We're sitting ducks out here! Show yourselves, you cowards!
The Alliance will be upon us soon, and we have nowhere to run. Organize our defenses beginning with the rear. I want bat riders in the air and catapults at the ready.
My queen, your safety must be our first concern. Surely we can leave a few ships behind to...
Do not question me, Nathanos. Now go. Make for the eternity and bring this hero with you.
Yes, of course. Come along, hero.
Together with Nathanos, we take care of business. We take care of the assaulting Alliance troops, and we place some volatile vials aboard their ship, ready to send it down.
Meet me on deck when the vials are in place. There is someone here I want to kill personally.
Monsters! You have no place in this world!
You call us monsters? How rich! Stop holding back, old man! Show us the real you!
Enough!
Ah, there you are!
Our mission is somewhat of a success with the Alliance airship blown out of the sky, but the Banshee Queen is missing and we have to track her down.
We got the Queen into a rowboat, but she didn't want an escort. Told us to stay behind and fight. My guess? She landed somewhere up the coast and continued on foot.
No sign of Sylvanas in the hills. What have we here? That's one of hers, all right.
Our queen has eluded the Alliance and appears like she doesn't want to be followed, not by us or anyone else. Her will is her own, and it's not Nathanos' place to question, only to obey. So it is that we continue our mission of proving our worth and gathering this pillar of creation, a mission that eventually takes us into Helheim, the domain of Helya. It is there where we find the War Chief again.
Remember our bargain, Banshee. Do not dare cross me.
Sylvanas has made some kind of bargain with Helya, but she doesn't let us in on the specifics. Instead, we're told to find our own way out of Helheim, which we do of course, and outside we're sent to Nathanos again, who caught up with the Dark Rangers. They were sent forward aboard the Oblivion on a secret mission from Lady Sylvanas herself. Unfortunately, the Alliance again caught wind of our plans, and now Greymane, who has also survived the crash, he's attacking the outpost. This will not stand, of course, so we take out the Worgen assault on our base, we use our catapults, and we place some delicious explosions.
You cannot hide from me!
Now not even this will be enough to kill the King of the Worgens, as we find out soon enough. Meanwhile, Sylvanas had us prove her worth to gain access into the vault which contained her so desired prize.
Treacherous Banshee! You know not what you are meddling with!
Submit. The Valkyr are mine.
The deal between Helya and Sylvanas, it granted her the use of the Soul Cage, a magical lantern, which she tried to use on Aeir to make her submit. Aeir in turn is a Titan Watcher with the power to create more Valkyr, so by enslaving her, by making her submit, Sylvanas could potentially be kept alive forever, or at the very least give it the power to create more Valkyr, and by doing so, empower and create more Forsaken, like they had done with Nathanos. Unfortunately, Gen Greymane proved to be very hard to kill, and he shattered not only her lantern, but also her dreams. Now sadly enough, this storyline never really continued in Legion. Instead, it goes back to focusing on the Pillars and the war against the Burning Legion, with the factions only really taking towers from each other, and that's pretty much the end of the faction war. That means that the details of the bargain, what Helya would get in return, that's never really been revealed. But perhaps that will still happen in the future though, since one of the Island Expedition quests that they added with Battle for Azeroth, it does mention Helya making her return after we defeated her in the Trial of Valor raid. Perhaps, but in Legion, the faction war, it definitely took a backseat. While heroes, they rose up and they took the battle to the Burning Legion, even going as far as imprisoning the Dark Titan Sargeras. Before they could, the Lord of the Legion pierced the world with his mighty sword, wounding it and the Titan spirit inside. The world now bleeds, with all across its surface Azerite popping up, a powerful resource that will change the face of war in Warcraft forever.
This will change everything.
And while both factions go out to gather as much of the stuff as they can, Nathanos, he informs his queen about what is going on within the Undercity. Her role as war chief, it has some members of the Horde criticize her for not showing the other races enough attention, while her own people, they say that she's been giving them too much attention, and a void of power has developed in the Undercity. A void that has been filled by the Desolate Council. They're not another Putris or anything, they have no intention of seizing power from the Dark Lady. They're just there, making sure that there is a governing body to tend to the population's needs. The Forsaken, now resurrected by the Valkyr, resurrected by the Banshee Queen, they're granted free will, which means that they do have the freedom to disagree with the Banshee Queen's choices. She has seen a hell and wants to stay alive forever, but some amongst their people began to wonder if they were ever meant to do so. How much should they do? How far should they go just to keep existing? And for what reason? That's the question arising among some of the Forsaken, as well as emotions and memories to their days amongst the living. As crazy it might seem, a meeting between the living and the Forsaken is eventually set up to reunite family members with their lost ones. At first, Sylvanas believes that this ceasefire, it's a mistake. It will only lead to pain for her people. They cannot be human, and to dangle this temptation of reunion with loved ones will result in them growing discontented with who they really are, with being forsaken. They will deteriorate to heartbroken shells, wanting something that they can never have. She has no wish to see them suffer so, but Nathanos, he argues that she could use this to her advantage. If she would authorize this experience, this reconnection with people that they loved in life, and present it to them as something that she has generously granted, perhaps they would be more amenable to accepting her solution, finding ways to keep the Forsaken as a race from going extinct. It is, after all, only for a single day. Give them this hope, this moment with people that they thought they'd never see again. Then she would hold power to their happiness, at least in this aspect. Or they might decide that they hate the living and be all the more devoted to the Dark Lady. Either way, Sylvanas would win in this situation, and so it was that the Forsaken and humans reunited within the fields. Not all reunions were happy ones though. Despite a vigorous screening process at the start, some of the living, at the very last moment, they decided that they couldn't go through with this. They left the meeting, breaking what remained of the Forsaken hearts. They returned to their queen truly desolate, but others, they actually had a fantastic time. So much so that they did not want this moment, they did not want this day to end at all. Amongst the priests overseeing the meeting, there was Calia Menethil, sister to Arthas Menethil, cloaked and hidden, and she had promised the Anduin that she had no intentions of causing trouble. She was just there to keep an eye on the meeting. She had no plans of rallying the Forsaken away from Sylvanas, but when they called to her for help, she stood with them. She rallied those Forsaken, willing to come with them, to abandon their queen and run to the Alliance side. They're defecting, Sylvanas realized, and this would not stand. Her Dark Rangers fly out over the field, and they killed all of the Forsaken, even those that tried to run back to their queen. "My queen, what are you doing?" Nathanos asked. Sylvanas heard the shock in her normally calm champion's voice. She chose to overlook it. On the surface, what was unfolding below, the firing of arrows, the screams and pleas of the Desolate Council as they tasted their last deaths, could seem perplexing and disturbing. "The only thing I can do, and still hang on to my kingdom as it is," she said. "They were defecting. Some were running back here to safety," he replied. "They were," she agreed. "But how much of that was fear? How tempted were they until that point?" She shook her head. "No, Nathanos, I cannot take this risk. The only Desolate Council members that I trust are the ones who returned to me early on, broken and bitter, truly desolate. All the others, I cannot allow that sentiment, that hope to grow. It is an infection ready to spread. I have to cut it out." Slowly, accepting her words, he nodded. The war chief was smart and decided not to kill any of the humans at the meeting, only her own people, so that she would not be the one to start a war on this day. Calia, however, was not a member of the Alliance, so she was shot down, only to be resurrected by Anduin later on, but that's a different story. In essence, the reunion between Forsaken and humans, that was definitely a bust, and we can see that Nathanos, normally so silent and extremely loyal, he was rather shocked at the choices of his queen. Yet the war did not start on that day, because Sylvanas wasn't quite ready yet. They needed some more time to make their plans, to gather Azeroth, and figure out how to utilize it. When she did finally feel ready, all she had to do was convince other members of the Horde to go along with it. Amongst them was Saurfang. She explained to him that she wanted to secure peace for the Horde by wiping out their enemy once and for all. Her position as war chief had already been threatened before within Stormheim, and the Alliance, it was a clear threat to her goal of staying alive for as long as she could. So it was that they made their plans to capture the World Tree Teldrassil, to splinter the unity amongst the Alliance. The Alliance would seek vengeance, of course, but they would have citizens hostage. The Alliance would not dare to strike at the Undercity for fear of their people. It would take them years to muster a fleet to even attempt to do so. How would Gilneas respond to the Alliance reclaiming Teldrassil before the home of the Gilneans? Infighting, Anduin in his new role of High King having to deal with a political crisis. The respect that the others give him, it's a courtesy and not an obligation. If the Alliance will not march as one, each nation will then act in its own interest. Each army will return home to protect their lands from the hordes. One single victory would cripple the Alliance for years, destroy them from within. Then they could strike peace with the individual nations and carve them away from the Alliance, piece by piece. Saurfang eventually sawed her way and agreed with their plans. Now the Alliance, they'd filled Orgrimmar with spies to keep an eye on things, something that they could use to their advantage by having Saurfang and Nathanos fight in public, pretend that they were going to march into Silithus rather than to Darkshore. Their plan actually worked. The Alliance was put on a false trail, and the Horde forces marched towards the home of the Night Elves. To their credit, the Elves did put up a fight. They even forced Nathanos and Saurfang to find an alternate route for their troops, but in the end, they stood little chance against the might of the Hordes. Sylvanas even engaged Malfurion in combat, with Saurfang striking a dishonorable blow in his back. Instead of taking the prize and killing him herself, she decided to let the High Overlord finish it, but that would be a choice she would definitely come to regret. It went against the Orc's honor, and he couldn't do it. Empty-handed, he returned to his war chief, and Nathanos wasn't happy. Horde blood would spill because of his foolish pride, of his foolish choice. But while the two of them, they were already making new plans, were making ready to occupy the tree, Sylvanas gave the order to
burn it.
The war chief's words cut through Saurfang's thoughts. He stared at her. Burn what? Nathanos looked just as confused. They exchanged glances.
Burn it!
Nathanos turned without a word and motioned to the siege crews. It happened fast, faster than Saurfang could comprehend. A troll mage spread fire across the payloads, and with a pull of a lever on half a dozen siege engines, the Horde flung death into the air. No, Saurfang whispered. He watched, speechless, as fire arced across the ocean. Every single payload hit its target. Orange flames began to spread across Teldrassil. Silence fell over the Hordes. Even the cries of the captured Night Elves vanished. Everyone watched in disbelief. No, Saurfang whispered again, louder. A second volley launched, and that broke the shock that had paralyzed him. No, he roared. Stop firing! Stop! It was too late. The second barrage hit, and within moments, the lower half of the World Tree was engulfed in flames. The fire moved as if it were alive, climbing the tree, scrambling towards the city in the height of its branches. Why? Why? Saurfang breathed. He looked again at Nathanos. The Forsaken's eyes were wider than the Orc had ever seen. With Malfurion surviving, Sylvanas decided to inflict the wound that his death would have caused in a different way. She decided to burn down Teldrassil, and all of them still left inside. This was never part of the original plan, and Saurfang couldn't believe it. They would come for them now, all of them. There was no honor in this, and yet the Horde followed the war chief into the battle for Lordaeron. Here we see the Alliance forces gathered, as without the hostages in the tree, they were now free to retaliate. But Sylvanas, she's definitely cunning and no easy prey. She might have won several times throughout the battle with her ruthless plans and abilities, be it by killing and resurrecting her own troops, using the Blight, or simply blowing the place up. But the Alliance had Jaina Proudmore show up just in time to make the difference, as well as Illyria Windrunner, the Void Elves, and Gelbin Mechatork.
Look who joins the fray. Good. I was hoping you'd keep this interesting.
I assure you, Blightcaller, The pleasure is all mine.
Now it's the Horde that has no way of winning the battle, and while Southfang decides that enough is enough and he can no longer follow Sylvanas' commands, Nathanos remains loyal as ever as she plans her final move.
You know what must be done. Go, my champion.
Now this scene can be seen and interpreted in many different ways, but to me it looks like Nathanos is not too happy about leaving his queen to the wolves, yet all the same he still obeys her command and he gets ready for the explosion and their eventual escape. This then leads us into battle for Azeroth, where both sides track down new allies for the war effort. Whereas the Alliance, they target the Cultirans, the Horde, they go after the Zandalari. None other than Nathanos leads their mission into Stormwind and the liberation of Prophet Zul and Princess Talanji, daughter to King Rastakan, who's the leader of the Zandalari. Our mission is a success, despite the Alliance forces trying to stop us. But the princess has no intention of returning to Orgrimmar. Instead, she takes us to her home. She takes us to Zuldazar.
It appears the Alliance dogs have lost our scent.
Good, good. Our journey is almost over.
I hope the war chief's faith is well placed.
She seems very powerful, certain, in control.
It is an honor to serve my queen.
And serve her he will. As our adventures into Zandalar, it has us help out the princess, with threats from both within and without, securing their allegiance and their troops for the hordes. Meanwhile, Nathanos is ordered by his queen to focus on the war efforts and secure footholds within Cultiran territory.
Try not to get my queen.
Is everything in order?
Yes, my lady. The Banshee's Wail is prepared to depart at a moment's notice.
Good. Work with our champion to determine where we will secure a foothold first.
As you command, War Chief.
See it done, and dispatch reports of your progress to me.
We will not fail you. Safe journey, my lady.
Under his guidance, the Horde secures footholds within Tidegard, Drasvar and Stormsong Valley, gathering a surprising amount of new undead forces to gain information and power. Information that eventually leads us to collecting the Abyssal Scepter and stumbling upon the corpse of Derek Proudmore, who's the brother of Jaina Proudmore, died to defend the world against the first Horde invasion. I'm sure that his corpse will be put to good use in the future, but while all of this is going on, Malfurion and Tyrande, they took their time to heal and they're ready to retake their lands. Horde heroes are called to Darkshore, as the forces stationed there, they're a little bit worried about the dark moon in the sky. The outpost claimed they've yet to be reinforced with the main forces, and suddenly they found themselves outnumbered against the Night Elves. Nathanos wants us to help uncover what exactly has happened, also getting their lumbering operations back in working condition, and also getting them some reinforcements. The Dark Lady has sent him here with the Valkyr Brynja and Signe, a great sign of confidence, knowing how valuable these Valkyrs are to her, and how many she's already lost. With the aid of Brynja, we can raise the slain Night Elves into our service. Those that are unwilling, they're dealt with. The hunt for information, that is done by kicking the crap out of the Night Elf lieutenants, but none of them is really talking, while the Warden Scylla Moonwarden, she tracks her every move.
Scamper back to your Banshee Queen. We are coming for you.
As luck would have it, a little confused Wisp shows up, bobbing up and down as if in a daze. It follows us all the way back to camp, where we use some persuasive methods to find out what is going on, to see with our very own eyes that Tyrande has gone through a ritual and has now become the Night Warrior. That is why Elune, why the moon turned dark. Quite unsettling, and we'll have to accelerate our plans before we're overrun by these newly invigorated elves.
There is one more asset to acquire. One who resisted and failed. The Dark Lady was very specific in her wishes.
Before Sylvanas gave the order to burn down Teldrassil, she had herself a little chat with a dying Night Elf. The Laren had fought fiercely against the Horde forces, but she would not die. Not without trying to reach Sylvanas, who remembers herself as a fool, trying to stand up against Prince Arthas as her kingdom fell.
Life is pain. Hope fails. Now you understand. grieve, you'll soon join your loved ones.
I grieve for you. You've made life your enemy. And that is a war you'll never win. You can kill us, but you cannot kill hope.
And so, the order to burn down the tree was given, and in her final moments, Daliran cursed the loon, the elf that dared to grieve for Sylvanas. She's now become a prime target for the Dark Lady, to be brought back in Undead.
This is where it ends. You have nowhere else to run. Assault Theridos! Spare me the trouble and die! Soon she will be here, and she will tear you to pieces!
My, look what we have here. The hunter has become the prey. It's almost a cliché when you think about it.
No! This was not...
What are you waiting for? Finish her!
One of the first choices that were given while questing. We can either take the kill ourselves and end Syrah's life, or we can refuse to do so, which then, Nathanos, he will just do it himself.
Try not to get yourself... I knew you didn't have it in you.
Where is she?
We will raise the fallen elves into new champions for the Forsaken and the Horde. But this is where the story for both factions comes together, as Tyrande tracks down her prey.
Now that we have the preliminaries out of the way, we can begin the ritual.
Light caller!
Well, this is inconvenient. Protect the Valkyr!
You will not see another sunrise, monster.
How uncouth for the Queen of the Tree Elves, is it? No, I suppose that won't do. What exactly do you rule over these days?
I am no queen. I am the Kaldorai's vengeance.
You are nothing. Raise them!
Rise. In the name of Sylvanas, the Banshee Queen, I bestow this gift upon you.
Syrah Moonwarden and Daliran, they're raised as a Dark Warden and a Dark Ranger Captain, new forces for the Banshee Queen. With the Valkyr empowering him, Nathanos is actually able to hold his ground against Tyrande, but she does not stand alone.
Enough! Any last words, priestess? Soon you will share the fate of your dear friend Syrah and the noble Dalaran. Reunions can be so heartwarming.
Shal Karath!
You cannot hide from me forever, elf.
We do not stand alone. Now!
What?
Your end has come.
We require more time. Finish it, Signe. I will handle this.
You are too late. Behold!
You must fight the shadow in your hearts, sisters.
We placed our faith in you.
And you abandoned us. A loon abandoned us.
We have nothing left. We are forsaken.
Never again! Ashtoribas!
No! Dark Lady, I am sorry.
Witch! You shall pay dearly for that. Let's move!
I will hunt them down.
We make our escape, together with Nathanos and his new recruits, but not before Tyrande takes out Brynja. That means that Sylvanas now has 3 Valkyrie remaining of the Pact, with enough power to bring her back. And since in the past they have shown that it can take multiple Valkyries to bring her back, who knows how many times they can still do it. This was the reason why we saw the War Chief make a deal with Helya in Legion. The power to create more Valkyrie and potentially stay off death forever. This was a big part of the reason why she instigated the war into Darkshore to begin with, to take care of the threat of the Alliance, secure a position as War Chief, and keep herself going for as long as she can to stay out of the realm of torment. But as we know, Nathanos, he wouldn't mind spending eternal damnation if it would be at his queen's side. Like some amongst the Forsaken, those that we've seen in the novel Before the Storm, some amongst them are wondering now how long they should carry on their undead life, and for what reason. This is where Nathanos' story ends for the moment, but I'm sure that he's going to have his role to play within Battle for Azeroth, and it's anyone's guess where the story might take us. In the case of Nathanos, one thing that is definitely clear, he is devoted to the Dark Lady. It was her name that was the first spoken thing to come out of his undead mouth, and whatever she commands he will do, despite what he himself might think about it. He will follow her orders. And yet, there are some cracks showing here and there, like after the ritual with his nephew, the feeling of regret, the choice of gunning down every Forsaken at the meeting, being hesitant as she gave the command to burn down Teldrassil, hesitant to leave her side in the Undercity. In the past, I would have 100% connected his fate to whatever might happen to the Dark Lady, but with those cracks and perhaps a necessary change of leadership amongst the Forsaken, I'm not as convinced as I used to be. I do really wonder how people would respond to Nathanos as the faction leader, considering that he's not exactly a character that's easy to love.
Come along, hero. Speaker of the Horde. If you run now, you may live.
Even the comments on the part 1 video, it clearly showed that Nathanos, he makes an impact and an impression, which I'd say definitely makes him a good character. Not a fun one or relatable one. Some of you might remember some of my rants about him during the streams, but at least you do notice him and he invokes responses, which is always good, considering that he's a character build up within World of Warcraft. I really do wonder though what the future might bring. By all means, let me know what you think his fate is going to be. Those mysteries within the story of Battle for Azeroth, they are definitely what keep me interested in the story.
For the Horde. For the Dark Lady.
For now though, I hope you're more aware of what Nathanos has done, what the road was that led him to be leading the Horde forces in Battle for Azeroth, and as always, thank you very much for watching everyone. Subscribe if you like my videos, leave a like if you enjoyed this one, and until next time guys, see ya!